Are we live? Yeah, we're live. So, guys, this was kind of an impromptu live stream. I've been trying to say that I want to try to do a live stream a week. It probably won't always work out, but when it does, I will make it happen. So, yeah, guys. So I was blessed enough. I reached out to Ricardo, and he was available. And we
What's
might
up?
even have Paul stopping by at some point. So, but yeah, thanks for joining, Ricardo. How you doing, man?
Absolutely. Good. I'm doing well. It's always fun to come along with you, buddy. I
Yeah,
appreciate the
yeah.
invite.
Of course, of course. Like I said, live streams are way more fun when you have someone else involved.
Yeah, little
And
interaction. Hey,
yeah.
check in the comments though, because I remember the last time. Remember our audio was a little different. Like, do we sound good in the chat?
Oh,
Both of
there's
us kind
Moon
of
Henry's in
equal.
the chat. Yeah, how do we sound? Are there levels good? Because obviously we can fix that here in a second if it's not.
Mm-hmm. What up, Moon?
But yeah, as we kind of just go, as everyone gives us the okay or not okay, I kind of teased. We went to Asheville. The wife and I went to Asheville, North Carolina, in April 2023. So obviously it's before that storm wrecked the place. And I snapped a bunch of pictures, and I never made a video about it. I probably have only just referenced it. So I thought that'd be a good kind of jumping off point, talking about some old world stuff and just weird. I mean, the Biltmore Estate, a Vanderbilt property, it's so bizarre. And yeah, the story that was before I had like the really old world eyes to kind of like know what
Yeah.
I'm looking at. But even then I was like, this story doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, something's rotten.
Have you been there?
No, I have not. I have not. No,
Yeah,
I'd like to get there.
yeah,
We've always wanted to go there.
Asheville's an interesting place. It's definitely got some old world stuff. And I just always thought it was really strange that knowing a little bit about the history of the Vanderbilts is that, Cornelius Vanderbilt, like kind of the patriarch of the family, kind of the one you would know, he was obviously in the shipping business at first, and then he sold all his stakes in the shipping business and got into trains. So the Vanderbilt railroads and all that stuff, and they are based out of New York. So I was like, that's really
Hmm.
weird that they would build the biggest mansion in all of the United States in Asheville, North Carolina. And at the time they must have built it in Asheville. Well, if they built it, there's Jason Jack. What's going on, Jason? If
What's
they
up,
built
Jason?
it in the 1880s, 1890s, man, you could imagine how there would have been nothing there.
Yeah,
Nothing there.
yeah. So is that Vanderbilt different than what we got here in Tennessee? Because I know that like there's
Oh,
Vanderbilt
Vanderbilt
call,
University.
yeah, over here too.
Oh yeah, it's all the same Vanderbilt. I'm sure
Yeah,
if it's not directly Cornelius Vanderbilt, it's probably one of them.
yeah.
Because what we're told about this, I want to say that it was Cornelius Vanderbilt's grandson who built this house.
Mm-hmm.
We're told. We're told. Let
Yeah.
me just pull up a picture. Let's go right into looking at some pics of it.
What camera are you using?
When I took these pictures,
Yeah.
this is my phone.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So just check that thing out. I mean, of course, for the first thing that I was like really fascinated with, it's got gargoyles all over it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when you start to go through it, it's just like this is not a normal house, as you can see.
No, it's not. So, what are your thoughts on like the gargoyles and stuff like that? Because we were talking about it in the podcast, and you know how just in in the kingdom of God, there's like all these weird creatures and stuff like that. And I know a lot of times like we want to associate something to being like this is this evil thing, but like I don't know. I was just kind of curious of what you thought about it.
Yeah, the gargoyle mythology is really weird because I think they say that they put them on the outsides of buildings to keep away evil spirits.
Mhm.
but they look very evil. What's funny is as you say that there was there was a cartoon that came out. I don't know if it was like in the 90s or the early 2000s or something. I think it's just simply titled Gargoyles. And
Yeah, I
in
remember
that
that.
somebody sent me, it was like either it was like the very first episode or it was like the trailer or it was like the opening to the episode. And it was talking about like 1,000 years and how these things had gone away or something like that and they were back. It was really, I wish
What?
I could play the clip because I'm sure it'd probably be copyright on YouTube. But
Mhm.
obviously, every time we hear 1,000 years now, it's like the ears
It's
perk
like,
up. Like,
yep, it's like, "What?"
what are they talking about? 1,000 years? And yeah, I mean, I think that why I was first resistant, I think, to some of the like old world buildings being millennial reign buildings, probably was stuff like this, like the
Mhm.
gargoyles, because I thought, yeah, well, I mean, that's really not something that you would expect if this was all Christian stuff, right?
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Like, why would that be there if this was like had something to do with the saints or Jesus himself?
Right.
I believe that likely something like this probably was built before.
Yeah.
It could have been built before tribulation happened.
That wouldn't surprise me because just from, on my other video that I was talking about, all roads lead to Rome, like
Hmm.
I truly think that a lot of these were from the Roman Empire and they got taken over by the saints. And then after the millennial kingdom, then it just got taken back over from the guys that it got taken away from in the first place.
Yeah, that
Which is strange too, because you think about the Roman Catholic Church, like they've taken over like a lot of these buildings and turned them into like these churches, and they call them cathedrals and stuff. So it's like it was Roman, and then the Romans came back, if that is really Roman Catholic,
yeah,
they
yeah.
came
I
back.
mean, yeah, for sure. I think that there certainly could be something to that. That this is, or some people have mentioned. I remember even like once I was kind of on board with the Millennial Kingdom, was that it's possible also that some of this stuff could have been added later too.
Hmm.
Like, we don't know when this stuff was put on. Obviously, if we're talking about like these timelines that are stretched out over 1,000 years, like, and also not everyone was good during this time. So
Yeah,
would there be some kind of a remnant of kind of the evil?
yeah. Is uh is Jason Jack still in the chat?
Yeah, he's still in there.
He is. Did you watch that video about his like his theory on the history of the Islamic religion?
No, I have not. I need to check it out.
Yeah, dude, it's really good. It kind of, because a lot of people are talking about this 1776 date, and it really kind of gave me a different perspective. Like even how like his theory on the millennial reign and how it actually happened, like there was still this infighting, and he's saying that the wolf in scripture was like these Pharisees, and then from the Pharisees and Sadducees, like erupted like the Muslim religion came from that basically, and then it still existed within the millennial reign, and it was that wolf within the rest of those other creatures like the lamb and the
Yeah, I
leopard.
could
And
see that.
yeah, and it makes sense because in prophecy, even when it's talking about the kingdoms and stuff like that, it's it's not referred to like an animal, it's like an actual thing, like a kingdom, uh or in that case like a religious people, or like a people.
Yeah, what's funny is like when we talk about like biblical cosmology and people try to allegorize so many of the verses about the earth standing still and being on pillars and things like that. But then
Mhm.
they want to take like the the wolf laying down with the lamb as absolutely literal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's those are the ones where I read in Isaiah, I'm like, it was clearly figurative.
Yeah.
What I'm reading anyways. And I do think that it does seem like that there's a lot of people who try to make so many of the Old Testament passages about this time afterwards as being absolutely literal. And then they're like, well, when did that happen? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, because I think that to me, it's obviously Jesus gives us a lot of good examples of like when they think things are going to be absolutely literal, and he tells you like these are spiritual concepts I'm telling you about.
Right. Yeah, and it's especially when it comes to prophecy. Prophecy is just different altogether. Like for example, here's one example where I've heard a lot of people say this where it's saying that like the woman or that like there'll be a flood and in the book of Revelation and they're saying like,
Hmm.
"Oh, well that's the mud flood." And I'm like, "Well, no, that's actually not what it is." Because oftentimes in the Bible, it's talking like a flood or waters, it's talking about like a lot of people, like many people. Like say for example, when it says when when the when the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Lord will lift up a standard against them. So the flood is referred to the enemy, like the people. And so
Hmm. Yeah. Well, there's
that's
many water. Yeah, the people and the many waters.
yeah, and even the many waters at the end, pretty much at the towards the end of that chapter, it tells you what the many waters are. It's like it's many like people, kindreds, tongues, and nations. That's what the many waters is that the that the beast or the horse sat upon. I can't remember which one it
Oh,
was.
that's interesting that you say that because I was leaving room that could have been about the mud flood, but what you're saying kind of
No.
makes sense to me that because it says that the the devil or the serpent, the dragon
Hmm.
sends out a flood to pursue the
Yeah.
woman, but
Yep.
then the earth opens up and swallows it up. So it's almost like it takes me back to in the book of, and like what is that in Leviticus when
When
there's those priests that go against Moses and then the earth swallows them
Yep.
up.
Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, I think that so this is a mistake I think that a lot of people are making is and I think we all know better, but sometimes we can still tend to do it, is to take a verse in isolation of the rest of the Bible. So you gotta see, like, how is this word being used in the rest of the Word of God, and then read it in its entire context, and then come to the conclusion. Because, as much as we want to make this theory fit into the Bible, we're not gonna do it any service if we're like picking verses out of their context to make it seem like it supports our theory when it really doesn't, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. No, you're right. I mean, that's what I said. I'm open to it, but I hadn't really say, oh, that's definitely it. Isn't this wild? All these pictures that like
Yeah,
they
that
have.
that head, yeah.
The funny thing is like look at that little thing above it. That guy with the mustache, and it looks like it's got wings, and
Yeah, it almost looks like, when I first saw it, it looked like one of those crests or something like that. It had on
yeah,
the crests.
definitely. It's got some squirrels up in there, but yeah, like it's what I find really interesting on these old world buildings is that almost all the faces are different. It says like
Really?
somebody who's in construction and like when if you did plaster, you'd make a mold, right?
Right.
But and some people say, oh well, that would be how they did some of the World Fair stuff. But then you look like how many molds did they make?
Yeah.
Because all the stuff's different. It's not all
Yeah.
the same. Like I mean,
Yeah.
there's like little faces everywhere on this building.
Yeah, and the fact that it's still up, because uh, going back to Jason Jack's video when he was talking about how they added 1,000 years, like I think in my head I was thinking of that like a little bit differently, but when he like laid it out, it made perfect sense because his argument is that the little season started in 1776. So say the whole date that we say that Jerusalem fell was 70 A.D., but if you just say maybe it was 76 AD, 1,000-year reign of Christ is 1,076. They add 700 years and it's 1776. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. But like I hadn't thought about it that way until he actually like laid it out. So I thought that was a pretty good perspective.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. It's that we say 70 AD, but it's based on the things Josephus wrote, and it's also based on the modern chronology.
Hmm.
We don't know that it was 70 AD. We always just say that,
Exactly.
and of course, without a lack of a clear date, we always will. I think I'll continue to say 70 AD,
Yeah,
but
just because
we
everyone
really don't know.
knows, yeah, everyone knows that, so it's relatable, but at the same time, we can't really trust these dates, but
Check out the tapestries in this place. We got Pan. the goat demon in here.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Wow. You don't think that looks like a satyr?
Um, I mean,
Kind
I
of.
guess it is a satyr, but I mean, that's what Pan is?
Okay.
Yeah, Pan is a satyr, I believe.
Okay.
Like, so even on the inside,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like the attention to detail in these places is unreal.
And just how many there are too, right? It's
Yeah,
just
it's like everything. Of course, there's Pan again. This looks like is that Poseidon?
oh yeah,
Got the trident.
looks like yeah. And that's inside.
Yeah, all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff.
Huh.
Those look kind of saintly.
Yeah.
Right there.
Looks very Catholic-ish, but as far as that goes, like even my wife was talking to me about this the other day, and um,
Oh,
because you just think about what the Catholic Church is today, but what if what if they just hijacked it all just and then they turned it into something else? But like we just really don't know. It's hard to
well,
say.
right. No, I think that like some of this stuff, like the stuff that's depicted here, like look at that. It looks like some man who's on Earth and he's looking up toward heaven. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
that could definitely be a Greek Roman, kind of mythology, religious thing right there. But it also could represent something that's maybe heavenly,
Right.
and then but the stories that historians might tell us is like, oh no, this is clearly a reference to Greek mythology.
Mhm.
But you're like, but what if it's not Greek mythology? What if this is more like, because what I believe is that the the Romans and the Greeks, they worshipped angels. So when they showed
Mhm.
their gods and they looked like Poseidon and Zeus, it's like, what if the angels look like that?
Yeah.
When they're on Earth. So what if there was other angels who look like them? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And oftentimes, even in the Bible, people thought that they looked just like men too,
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm. Look at that. It's like a naked boy wrestling a goose or something.
got his booty hanging out.
Yeah. So look at all that. I mean, there's just so much. There's so much going on in these murals.
I know. That looks like another tribe or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's this guy over here? Oh, that's a woman. She's fond of herself. She looks like
Is that
is
a
she looking
mirror?
through like a black mirror?
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? It almost looks like something like that.
And what's up with on that top left?
Top left. Let's go up there.
It looks like you see those two in the
Oh,
top
what I
left.
see up here, I see a lion and I see a
Yeah. Well,
scorpion. So I'm saying that's Leo,
is
and
that the
that is,
constellations?
yeah, I think that's what that's showing. That's depicting.
Okay. Looks like
Yeah,
an army or something.
lots
Yeah.
happening.
What's that?
This is some kind of, is this a family tree? Maybe
Maybe. Yeah.
some medieval stuff. This kind of reminds me of like the what is it? Game of Thrones. It's like the different houses.
Yeah, I never
Okay.
seen it.
No, it's a little bit depraved. Here you go. Now
See
this is
that.
some
Oh yeah.
some some Narnia looking stuff right here.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
look, see, like, are those halos over? Here's an angel. There's a lion. There's, I think, maybe an eagle or a hawk,
mhm.
and then there's a bull, and they all look like they have halos. And there's
Yeah.
the lamb.
And
I'm guessing that's Mary.
uh, yeah.
Pretty, pretty interesting. Obviously, some heavenly stuff happening here. Look at that. Is that is that Elijah? Maybe.
Chariots in the sky. Yeah, it's hard for me. That stuff just all looks too Catholic, and so it's just my mind just goes straight there. You know, even having Mary right there, it looks like she's because I know what the Catholics think about Mary, and they actually call her the like they give her titles that are only mentioned for Jesus. Like Jesus is the mediator between God and man. But in Roman Catholicism, they say that she's the mediatrix. Like, no, no, you actually need to go through
Yeah.
Mary to get to Jesus, and she's actually full of grace, and she's the one that you need to go to because Jesus, he's always just so mad and he wants to just throw everyone in
Yeah,
hell.
I know. That
And
oh, here you go.
you need to go to Mary.
Look at this one at the top.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. It looks like it says, I mean, obviously this is a different language, but is that something that says New Testament on the right?
It definitely looks like Testament.
Oh,
Yeah.
look, and then you have Theodosius. So Theodosius the first was like the one who made the Theodosian laws.
Mm.
He was like a Roman emperor who made the whole empire Christian. And then you have here, it's like, but that's Veda's Testament.
It might be so like in the Geneva Bible, the V
Oh, you.
is a U, yeah. So
That's not helping me pronounce that any better.
no, it's not. I was trying to
Yeah. There's
Ides. It says Ides right there.
yeah, there's a lot happening in that one.
Yeah, no doubt.
There you go. I mean, they were all over the place. That's why I took a lot of pictures of them. I mean, it seems like
Seems like that one's just a queen.
yeah, it's
I don't get any Mary vibes on that one.
no, and those certainly look like gosh, it's like this certainly could be millennial reign stuff. Are they trampling on somebody over here? It looks like the horses are stomping on somebody.
It does. Can you go lower? Or is that the bottom?
This is the bottom of
Oh,
over
okay.
here.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, this could be some millennial reign looking stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting.
I mean, look at this. Look at that helmet right there.
I
The
know.
soldiers,
It's
kind of
intense.
awesome looking.
It is. Looks like his head is in the mouth of a bird or
Oh,
something.
look at that right there.
Uh-oh.
This looks like it's like he was going to try to chop this saint's
Look
head
at
off.
and the angel stopping him.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
it is cool.
That is.
I think I got a closer picture of the queen, and then you had all these busts everywhere. More angels on the ceilings.
So is that entire ceiling a mural?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Wow. Yeah, it's just got a lot of depth and detail.
Yeah, everything does.
Hmm.
Look at that one.
Don't say a word.
You think that was that guy
Hey,
was a mason?
yeah, it's like we're not gonna tell you what time we're in. We know, but you don't know.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
You think about it too, like they have to know, otherwise how can you control the entire population, you know, if they didn't know?
Hmm.
Like they absolutely do know.
Here's another picture. Same pictures. And there's the naked boy again,
Now you see his frontal.
getting the best of the goose. That's an interesting picture there.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is funny. So like this is when I went in and I saw the bed and I was like, is it just me or does that bed look little?
It's tiny.
That's what I thought. It kind of reminds me of when we went to Monticello and Thomas Jefferson bed was really little too. And I thought, you got this big house. Why would you have this tiny little bed? And now
Yeah,
this house, I think this house, they said it's 125,000 square feet. It's either
that's nuts.
125,000 or it's 175,000. Because
That's
I couldn't
insane.
remember. Yeah, because they own the acreage was I think the acreage was either 125,000 acres or 175,000. But the house was something similar to that.
That's crazy. Yeah, that is a tiny bit because I'm not even a tall guy, and I wouldn't fit in that.
Yeah. Yeah, see in the inside too, they got this all the same statue. Then there's some little prince guy right here.
Mm-hmm.
He
What does
looks
it say? The Lord what?
Lord Euston.
Houston.
Houston. He
Hmm.
looks obnoxious.
What's on his? Is that like a skull or something? No.
Maybe the lion.
Okay.
He looks like a terror, whoever had to deal with him. This guy. Like some kind of friar or something. This looked like it was added much later. That was my guess. To get the
Yeah.
bat signal on the right.
Oh yeah.
Is that the Joker? It's definitely a jester, right?
It's a jester, yeah. His little accordion thing. Yeah, that painting is nothing in comparison of the other stuff.
There's the goddess Nike.
Where's her head?
That's how I think I can't remember where they found that. But yeah. So there's on the outside of the building, there's plenty more stuff. This property was so big.
Could you even get to it an entire day, or did you run out of time?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, the property's actually absolutely massive, and I think there's more houses and stuff there. But there was a garden. Yeah, you could see it all in a day.
Okay.
But people will spend a good amount of time there. I'll have to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, that thing
But
is
yeah,
huge.
I want to share this real quick though. I thought it was pretty interesting. If you go over to this, and so you now you see what the Vanderbilt's house was in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Now you need to see this. This is worth considering here. So this is actually no, I don't want to go to that. This is the Rothschild's house in Great Britain. Tell me that's not like the same, like the exact same style.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's like the same but different, right?
Yeah.
Like those roofs are the exact same. Talk about excess.
No kidding. I mean, it's beautiful though. I mean,
Yeah, no, these places are unreal.
I mean,
Same vibes, right?
yeah. It's like in this culture, whatever it was, they had a very, very big interest in art. You could tell, like just artistic, even within the fabrics and the pictures, and it's all over the walls. It's just paying attention to a lot of detail.
Yeah, I want to go show that thumbnail I made again because I think to me, I don't know about you guys, but when you see this thumbnail, all right, look at that picture. I mean, maybe it's just a terrible quality, but what I see there is an ancient building.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like obviously see the horse-drawn carriage, and then you see the building, which was built in the 1880s or 1890s. I think it was like 1893 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So why does it look like that? That sucker looks abandoned.
It's like 1,000 years old.
It looks like it's 1,000 years old. You're right. Probably because it was.
Yeah.
I think it's really sus.
It is sus.
But I never would have considered that before. No way would I have considered that it was that old. I just knew I just didn't believe the story because what we're told is like Cornelius Vanderbilt's grandson built the biggest house in the whole world. I mean, not the world, the whole nation when he was like 30 years old. And why would he build it in North Carolina? Yeah. You're thinking like, why wouldn't he build that in New York? Yeah. There's something really weird about that area, but maybe because it was already there and they claimed it and they restored it in the 1890s.
That makes a lot more sense.
Now, I think that's, to me, where I've followed all these timelines. I don't know that all the timelines of these buildings are off completely, but I do think that that's probably when places were restored.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know, like, so if they give
Restored, not built.
yeah, so that some of the timelines make more sense if they say, oh, it took a year to build this building. Not that not that they claim that it took a year to build the Vanderbilt estate or the Biltmore estate, but it makes sense to me that if a renovation,
Hmm.
okay, I can believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Here, I got a few more pictures. This is same but different. This is going to be over in just in Asheville. Here was the other thing that I checked out while I was there, was something you guys should find interesting. Actually, I'll just start from the beginning over here. Okay, so this was just downtown Asheville, but it kind of had the same kind of iconography it had,
Hmm.
on these old world buildings. It had angels and sun faces and
That one looks
creepy
creepy.
creepy faces.
Yeah.
Yep, they don't build them like they used to, huh? Yeah, just so weird.
Looks like is that child pulling something out of the mouth of that? Is that a wolf or something?
Yeah, it's like it's either its tongue or it's something
Mm-hmm.
really
It's weird.
weird.
It
Really
is weird.
weird. Same thing right there, it looks like.
Both sides, yeah.
Okay, so check that out. So that's a teaser. This is right in front of a very prominent building in downtown Asheville.
And it's pointing.
And there you go.
Yeah. Masonic temple.
The Masonic. This is the Scottish Free Rite Temple in Asheville, North Carolina. And you know what's really wild? Of course, they're saying it got a date of 1914. I don't know if I believe that. And yeah, Scottish Rite. Look, so you go up here. Look, you got the double-headed eagle.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what they call this building, Ricardo? Did you see what I said? What they call it?
What is it?
Mount Hermon Lodge.
Interesting.
I
Mount
mean,
Hermon Lodge.
why would they name it Mount Hermon? Why do you think that they would name it Mount Hermon?
I think that they troll us a lot. So I don't know. It could be that. Or maybe it is something legit, but I just feel like we get trolled so much and then so many people just kind of run with the story and it's just to get a reaction out of people sometimes, I think.
I think that they named it Mount Hermon because most people don't know anything about Mount Hermon. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why, like, books like Enoch are excluded from most church canons, and they would say, "Oh, that's not a book you should be reading," because people really don't know what Mount Hermon. Like, would you really know about Mount Hermon at all if you just read the 66 canonical books?
No.
You would know that it was referenced in the Bible, but it doesn't give you any details about it.
Right.
But if you guys know, in the book of Enoch, it mentions that 200 watchers descended upon Mount Hermon. That's where they landed, and that's where they made their pact that they were going to sin. They were going to sin against women, they were going to sin against the children of men, and against God. And they bound themselves
Yep.
that they were all going to do it together. I think that's really interesting. So, if you believe like we believe, and like Freemasons and stuff would believe, I do believe that they are super interested in the knowledge of the Watchers.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. They're definitely interested in all that.
I mean, that would be a wicked thing, though, to to put on your building, though, because yeah, it's certainly a sign of evil, as far as I'm concerned. Because even in the so once you kind of see, like, you read Enoch and you read some of the Old Testament stuff where the Israelites are encountering giants, Mount Hermon was in Bashan. So when the Israelites, led by Moses, when they encounter King Og and also King Sion. That's that area. And so I find it really interesting knowing that they go in there, and obviously August mentioned how he's got his bed is like 13 foot long, 6 foot
Yeah.
wide, and then you have King Sion. They led giant tribes, and then so obviously the angel of the Lord goes before the Israelites. They win these battles. They kill both these wicked kings, and they're brought up so often. And then so you go into the New Testament when Jesus is at the Sea of Galilee. He takes the disciples up there. That's when you start to see all the demonic stuff when they're casting out all the demons.
Right.
And if you think about what the book of Enoch says about that, the deceased Nephilim became unclean spirits. And then so it's like it's no coincidence in the Bible that that's where all the demonic activity is. So like and interestingly, also interesting, the transfigurations on Mount Hermon. It's in Caesarea Philippi. And like so and that's the same place where Jesus is telling Peter, "You're Peter, and on this rock I'm going to establish my church, and the gates of hell are not going to prevail against it."
Right.
So it's really interesting to think about like that they're calling this place. There's a very spiritually significant part about that place.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's like they're going to take the kingdom by force. The gates of hell are not going to prevail against Jesus's church, his kingdom. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting for sure. I think that a lot of stuff, like I said, it gets put in our face, like maybe what you're saying, and just people, like we were talking off air the other night, like people just are not just thinking about things like this. Like they're just so far behind. Like they're so, like what we would call like a normie. Like they just
Hmm.
believe whatever the TV tells them, and they have no like internal thoughts or anything. They're just too busy with the day-to-day grind of life, and they don't even think about anything like what we're talking about. So when you bring something like this up to them, they look like a deer in the headlights. And so I think that's why they, like, if some of this stuff is true, like right in our faces, like people won't even notice it anyway. And then for us that do, it's just such a small number that it doesn't even matter to them.
Yeah. Well, that's this kind of like goes right into when a lot of normies will say, "Well, why do I need to know this?"
Yeah.
You're like, "Why do I need to know?" And it's like,
Why does it
but
matter?
well, it sort of matters if you want to understand the Bible at all,
Yeah.
like the context of anything,
y-
and to me, that view of like, oh, well, is this a salvation issue or something like that? It's like, well, I don't know what you mean by that. I mean, the point is like we're trying to study the Bible, trying to learn more about it, and people try to when they start saying things like that, it's a little bit odd, right?
yeah.
That you'd say, what is this a salvation issue? It's like, well, I don't know. You have to ask God about that. I mean, like, why?
Yeah.
Like, really, why don't you want to know though? And until I started to really read my Bible again, I wanted to know what the weirder parts of the Bible meant, like why they were weird. I remember, yeah. I mean, I haven't agreed with everything Michael Heiser said, and I read his book, The Unseen Realm. But I really do think it's important. I think he had really good points about that. If it's weird, it's significant. And it's
Yeah.
like if you don't understand something, you should try to understand it. And yeah, without the context of like the giants and the Nephilim and the angels who sin, it's like understanding the full context of the Bible, it's really hard to understand.
Yeah. And to me, like, the more you know, that's not like gonna hurt you. Like, and when they say that too, I think it's more of like a deflection, because it, like, really people feel threatened. Like we're very prideful people in general. And so if you go to someone and you say that you're wrong, well, us as people, we don't like to hear, "Oh, I'm wrong," because everyone thinks that like what they're doing is right. And like if you even if you ask anyone anywhere, just some normal person, like they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm a good person." And they just, that's just what they think, and they just have no clue, like, because people are always comparing themselves to other people, and they say, "Well, I'm not as bad as them, so I must be pretty good, you know, but
Hmm.
what they need to realize is that our standard is comparing to a holy God that is without sin, and when you compare yourself to that, you think a lot less of yourself. And and so I just think it's like a pride thing where they don't want to admit that they're wrong, and so it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah, I think it does come from an insecure place. I
Mhm.
mean, I that's the thing. I remember one time I had a Bible study. It was like a church kind of sanctioned Bible study, and we were trying. I was, of course, I was. My brother and I were trying to go off script, and we were talking about spiritual things, and we were talking about the references to angels in the Bible and stuff like that. At one point, we started to talk about how Azazel's mentioned in the book of Leviticus,
Mhm.
and then yeah, this older guy who was an elder there. I think he was there to keep watch over us, and he was like, well, is this a salvation issue? And I was weird, and I remember just being, like, so turned off by that. I thought, like,
Yeah.
this is no, but I mean, it's really interesting, but it's weird that you said that. Like, I don't understand, like, why, like, what is your point?
Yeah.
It's like, if is this a Bible study?
Yeah.
Like, you don't wanna know more about what the Bible says or why it says the things it does? And yeah, to me, yeah, like, well, I think once you like, to me, when you really care what the Bible says, it's really, really interesting.
It is.
So, like, yeah, to try to understand this, and I really do believe, just outside of it being God's word, it's the best history book we've got.
Mhm.
That goes way, way back, and trying to understand a little bit more how the world was way back in the day. And that's why I said, like, I think it's funny that Brian and I have talked about it a few times recently, about like that when there's casual references to things like the lion men of Moab and just weird stuff in the Bible, and you're like, it's almost like the is a reason why it's brought up and dropped so quickly. It's because, like, this stuff is known,
Exactly.
kind of the stuff about the Nephilim. Like, people are like, why isn't there more stuff about the Genesis 6 stuff? It was like, well, for one, it's in Enoch.
Yeah.
For two, it's everybody knows this story. So it's it's told all around the whole world.
It would be redundant to keep mentioning it over and over when the people at that time already knew, like, that's just how it is.
Yeah, for sure. Let me
Mhm.
see. I think Paul's gonna hop on. So this will be fun.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the link to send him. Paul, do you have the link? If you got the link, you can just hop right in. Or I can dig it up. Actually, you know what? I know how to do that. Trying to find links. Oh shoot! I don't want to do that. We got a treat.
I I'm, uh I'm curious. I heard he was going to talk with Eddie Bravo.
He was actually he. I was lucky enough. I got a sneak preview of it. I was listening to that today, so we can ask him about that.
I want to, yeah. Yeah, because I know Eddie Bravo just from the whole flat earth stuff, like, he really took a hardened stance on that, and he got a lot of flack for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. I've seen a few clips of Eddie Bravo when he's on Rogan, and the points he's making, it's like, it's so funny because he's usually getting such a hard time for saying the things he is. But it's like, I remember there was a couple of good clips of him going around where he was talking about the Catholic Church, and he was talking about how the Pope had the weird kind of, like, they say it's a Jesus thing, right? But it's all like,
Oh, yeah.
and it looks like fire and stuff. It looks like something's coming out of hell. I
It
mean, you
does.
could you could say that obviously Jesus descended into the earth, but it clearly
It
looks evil.
it's creepy, yeah.
And yeah, so Eddie Bravo is saying that's not Jesus, that's the devil, that's Satan.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know that he's wrong. I think that he's right, but it was just funny, like, the reaction he was getting from, like, Rogan. And oh, the man is here.
Hey guys, how we doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, man. How are
How you
you?
doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm late. I had a screaming child. Well, I'm
Oh,
not
no
sorry for the
worries.
screaming child, but that's what happened. There we go. But
That's
yeah,
something they tend to do.
it is. It is. He's okay now. He's fast asleep, and I think I'm good for maybe half an hour. But I'm gonna have to get to bed myself. It's been a long day, a very long day. I'm covered in sick, as you can see.
Oh,
It's
nice.
been one of those days, but yeah.
Glad
Battle
you could join
wounds.
us.
That's it. How's it going anyway? What did I miss? What did I miss?
Oh, I was going through some of my old pictures. I was saying I went to the Biltmore Estate like 2 years ago, almost now, and I was saying I went before I had kind of old world eyes, and I remember not believing the kind of the mainstream narrative about it, but I had no clue that I was thinking like, what if this building's like 1,000 years old?
Yeah.
And now you're like,
Yeah.
and I was going through, there's a bunch of murals on the inside of it, and again, like with kind of the surface level knowledge I had about a lot of stuff. Oh, that's Pan. Here's all this kind of weird image, kind of pagan type imagery. But then I was like, but if you're kind of looking closely, you're like, I wonder if this has got some millennial reign looking vibes in here. They're seeing these armies, you're seeing angels, you're seeing like lions with halos and like bulls with halos, birds with halos, saints with halos. It's really weird.
Mm-hmm. Well, most of these old world buildings are just covered in Christian iconography. But like I said, a lot of people focus mainly on the pagan iconography as well. I like to think of it as just human history iconography. It's telling a story. I think that's why we have a bit of a mix of everything in there.
That's pretty good.
I think it depends on where you want to, how you want to perceive what you're witnessing. But humans make art. That's what we do. We're creative things, and I don't think we'd shy away from depicting the bad things either. That's what we do. It goes with any museum. It's usually mankind documenting where we went wrong. That's pretty much what art is, and trying to focus on how can we do better usually. So I'm not surprised by a lot of the questionable things that you find in these buildings, as well as obviously the obvious Christian iconography, which they conveniently ignore whenever these Tartarian researchers like to look at all these buildings, But maybe that's a conversation for another time. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that perspective too, because it's just basically like it'd be telling a story, So I mean, if say Jesus came back and he conquered all his enemies, I mean, why wouldn't you document that? That's an amazing event.
Absolutely. Well, I was just in Edinburgh. I've been away for a couple of nights with the family, and I was exploring this place. And talk about old world, like Rome was clearly there. Is one thing that's obvious. Like there's just Roman architecture everywhere, like pillars all over the place, But then mixed in with it is like this Gothic new revivalist. I don't know what to explain it as. It's an odd mix, but it's all old world, and it's all clearly millennial reign, post tribulation stuff, And I don't know much about the theory, but I've heard people banding around every now and then that it's quite possibly the original Jerusalem, like Edinburgh is Jerusalem. Like that's where it all truly went down. And I didn't know anything about. It was in the back of my mind while I was there because I'd loosely heard stuff. So I started to kind of look into it now, and there's maybe something there. Like you look at America, people say like maybe Utah was the original place, or Florida was the original place, or something. Everyone's got a theory about where the original Holy Land was. If you go into the alternative perspective, so I'm looking at it all with a bit of a grain of salt. I mean, I think Owen Benjamin, I heard today, thinks maybe France was the original place where it all went down. And I've heard the Edinburgh theory, and it's quite interesting because you have a castle on a hill, a temple on a mount, okay? And just next to it, exactly where it's described in the Bible, you have St. Arthur's Seat, which is the Mount of Olives, and it looks like it's been split in two. It looks like a mountain that's been rent in half, just sat there next to this temple. So maybe it is. I don't know. There's a coast just north of it called Joppa, just like the one described in the Bible itself, which is only about 3 miles away. Unlike I think it's in the Middle East, they have a coast called like Jaffa or something like that, which is similar, and it's like 30 miles away, and it's kind of, it matches better with Edinburgh. Who knows? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm just playing with the idea. I don't actually know, but being there, that country is beautiful. Like I could see God living there. You know what I mean? I can see it. Like it's incredible. Like the place, the grass is so luscious. The hills, it's not like the rest of England. There's something about it. It's really odd. It's so odd. Like it's very north, and it's in a different climate. So it was fascinating.
What's interesting about in the view when we were looking through Gunnar Heinsohn's stuff was the putting King Arthur before Jesus. So, like, what did they build before the Romans basically came over to Great Britain? You know, I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of like we don't know how advanced that they were before. I mean, so like sometimes people thought that a lot of the castles might have got built during the millennial reign, but I don't know that now. I think that the castle stuff might have been older than a lot of the Roman stuff. Because
who knows? I mean, there was many beast kingdoms before Rome.
yeah,
You know, and Rome was an amalgamation of all of them up until that point. Who knows what was being built up until that final time before tribulation? You know, who knows?
We don't know what Japheth's line was up to for all those times. I mean, really think about it. We really only follow the line of Shem and the line of Ham in the Bible. We really don't know much about. That's why it's like always like there's kind of there's a talk about the North, but obviously there's lots of things. I mean, even if like we're going geographically based on what we're taught, where Israel is and all that, there's a lot of stuff that's north of Israel.
Yeah,
you know, and that would have been Japheth's line. Yeah, and it's likely when you think about like the Gog Magog, obviously they're in the line of Japheth. Yeah, they probably built all kinds of stuff, and there's a rich history about that place we probably have no idea about because the Bible doesn't talk about it, and there's really no old history books that talk about that stuff.
Yeah, I got something to say real quick for you to consider, Paul. So I had just did a video about this just because, you know, a lot of times we're like thinking within our head, like, well, what if this, what if that, is this Jerusalem, is that Jerusalem? And so what I did is I just did a video and just read what the word said about it. And I don't think that like if Israel, what we call Israel, was here on earth at one time, I don't think that it's here anymore. And the only reason why I say that is because like I was reading in the book of Joel chapter 3, and it says and this is after when it's talking about like he came back and destroyed his enemies and stuff. And in Joel chapter 3 verse 17 it says, so shall ye know that I am the Lord your God, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall no strangers pass through her anymore. So I think that he's like now, like Jerusalem is like sanctified. Like there's not going to be any more like how it even talks about in Revelation. Like like the dogs are without. Like we're like no one's going to be in that place anymore, because at that time when he came back to judge Israel in that generation, like that was the ultimate slap in the face of God, because he sent all the prophets, they killed all the prophets. And then they're like, and then he says, well, I'll send my son, they'll love him. No, they killed his son too. And so I think that's why, you know, it was a slap in the face for God. And then so he wasn't going to deal with those people anymore. Like he was going to have his first resurrection saints with him, and the only people that are going to be in that Jerusalem from here on out is going to be those who aren't going to be polluting it. And it also alludes to that too. I was reading again, I'll share this one in Ezekiel chapter 39 verse 7. It says, so will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore, and the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, the Holy One in Israel. And so that's just what I'm thinking on there. Just by the wording of it, like that place is off limits for us right now until we get that new body and stuff. And so I think like a lot of people that are bringing that argument up, it might be just like maybe like something to distract us now. I think just because of what the word says.
Possibly. I mean, it could be a case of that. Maybe that's the beloved city that gets surrounded once people realize where it is, you know. Right now it is this obscure and maybe a place we just don't know about, that's not on the map, or a moving floating city now. Maybe who knows how it works. But it could be that place that's on the map already in the center of the earth that we see with the 4 rivers running out of it. You know, where the real river Euphrates is running from, you know, not this other counterfeit version that we probably have today that's supposedly drying up, you know. It's this type of thing. I'm sure you're probably right, and this is what I'm saying. I've noticed everyone's got a Jerusalem in the country. Everyone's got a carbon copy version of the Holy Land, and they have cities named after places in the Holy Land near it, and everyone's saying it was here, it was there, it was over there, and this must have been where it originally was. And it's kind of chasing after vain genealogies. It's all pointless. We are all Israel now. We are all
exactly.
the body
That was
of
the point of
Christ,
my the point of my whole video.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think it's a moot point. Obviously, because we're in the old world research game, we're looking for something, anything, see if we can find any clues, But I am noticing this. I am noticing this trend that there does seem to be everyone's got their own version of Jerusalem in their own country, and everyone's adamant they're the special chosen people. And it's kind of, well, if that's the case, then you're enjoying the fact that you were the ones who rejected Christ. You are the ones. It's kind of great. Is that what you really want to be known as? Like, it's pointless at the end of the day, wherever it went down. It's fun to speculate, though. Clearly, some trickery's been played if this is the case. Maybe they purposely named these places after places in the book, so everyone would get confused and not know where they're going. It could be a long con. Who knows? Again, what we don't even know what was really going on in England in the first century. We haven't got a clue.
No, I think that a lot of stuff that's really impressive on the earth probably was, dug out and cleaned up that after tribulation. I mean, then what was built afterwards? It's hard to say which all the buildings that were built afterwards. But yeah, it says in Revelation 21, it says that the gates are open at day and night, and there's no need of a sun there, and nothing that's defiled can enter that place. I always thought that verse was weird because it's kind of like in a lot of people's picturing it like New Jerusalem. Okay, so this is where the new heaven and new earth's at. So like, wait a minute. So why does it even need to make known that nothing that's kind of defiled can enter this place? I mean, it kind of implies that there's things outside the gates. And I think that's like when Paul's talking about like how this corruption is not going to inherit the kingdom of God. So you have to take off the corruptible and put on the incorruptible. I think that, I don't think that people like us could enter the holy gates until the time comes. But yeah, it's funny what you're saying about that. Like that, I was just having this conversation about like the the Black Hebrew Israelite things, and it's like their best verse to say that there's people is the slave boats, and it's like, so what you're saying is like you guys are the people who got cursed. It's like why are you trying to put that on yourselves? You know what I'm saying? Like that's not something that you should really be super proud about. It's like we were the people who God obviously threw off and put all these plagues on and threw them into slavery and all that. It's like, no, that's not you guys. I mean, again, like it's a very fleshly mindset. And it's like, it's outside of like what's important about the spirit of like, no, you can be true Israel if you put your trust in God and believe on his son. Not anything outside of that. Because outside of that, it's like that God is not showing preferences for people at this point.
It's an identitarian type ideology. It's kind of, they want to feel like they're a part of something bigger themselves or special or a part of the story of God and have a specific role to play in it so they can give themselves a sense of self. I think it comes down to, I mean, it's just sad because Christ is offering a true sense of self. He's allowing you to be who God intended you to truly be without losing yourself to a conglomerate in some way, which is kind of what these people do. They become one with their movement, should we say. And I think that's what's special about this little season thing. It's kind of, we may be placing ourselves in a specific time, but we're not exactly saying like we're special because of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like we're not placing ourselves above people for it. We're saying, listen, we're all in this together. Like we're all still the body of Christ here, and we've been lied to. Let's get together and figure this out quickly. We've got some black holes we need to fill in, and we're missing a lot of information. Help us, And it's a bit of a different attitude than we've got it all figured out. We're the special people of God. Follow us, or else. It's kind of, I don't think so. It's kind of, I've come figure it out with us because we don't know what's going on fully yet, but we know we know enough now to realize, okay, there's something going on here that's dodgy, And I think that's kind of what God wanted. What is it? It's God's glory to conceal the matter, but it's the glory of kings to discover it. Is that what it is? Proverbs, is that kind of thing? I feel like that's kind of what's going on here. God's calling his people to seek him out, and it's wonderful to be a part of that. I think Connor from the Cult of Con, which I think you might be talking to soon, he was saying, he kind of emphasizes this idea that there's something special about this movement, this community, We're not. When people come to us and see what we're doing, they feel it. It's like there's something going on here. Like God must be moving in this in some way, because we're not all, like I said, we haven't made like an identity around this. Our only identity is we're with Christ.
Exactly.
That's all we have, and we're taking what the Bible says literally at its word now. We're not adding layers of interpretation on top of it to make it fit into the secular narrative of the timeline. We're working backwards from the words of Jesus. It's the other way around. We're making, we're trying to make the world fit to the words of Jesus, not the words of Jesus fit to the world. You get what I mean? We're
definitely.
We're going the other way, and I think I don't think that's ever really been properly done before. Like we're doing it. This is the thing.
No, everybody's special in the other view. Was it the futurist view? I remember at one point I joked that it's like, so we're the ones who are obviously going to get resurrected first, and we're going to go reign with Jesus. And I used to joke, and I was like, you can imagine like the modern church is saying, like, yeah, it was unfortunate that the first century that they all got fed to lions and burned at the stake and stuff like that. But it's us. It's
we're
us
special.
that get to us. Yeah. We're going to be the ones who get. We were the one raised up for such a time as this.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate. Like that looked like a pretty rough time. But I mean, the Great Tribulation is going to be really bad.
We're the generation he was talking about. We are the generation.
Because of 1948, right, Ricardo?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
that's exactly
all the
right.
Signs are there, right? The signs of the times are here. And I don't know.
You know what I love about all this too, guys, is that we're open to scrutiny, I guess, because if your theory, if we're talking about this, like we're willing to be challenged as well, because I feel like we're literally standing on the solid rock right now, and I feel like this is really, it's not debunkable at this point, especially, just with the words that Jesus said, and just how everything, like I've been realizing everything in this little season has been a complete psyop on us. Like the whole thing, like even in my last video talking about Israel, like they wanted us to believe that they needed that revival of Israel in order to bring back futurism. And all that. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but I just feel like how you're saying too, like a sense of urgency, just like we need to just let everyone know like what's going on. And I was telling JT about Jason Jack's video that I just watched when he was talking about Islam, and he was talking about the 1776 date. And then obviously we can't put a date on things, but it is interesting that from 1776 to 2026 is 250 years. And you got all these like these people that are talking about a golden age with Alice Bailey and all that, and that's supposed to be 2025 and all this stuff. And then you got the ascended master agenda, that it's just like a bunch of weird stuff like all around this time right now. And I just feel like I don't know, I just feel like a sense of urgency, like we don't got a lot of time. Like that's just how I feel. And if we knew we didn't have a lot of time, how differently would we live our lives? Like say if we did
definitely.
Like say you did have 2 years to live. I mean, what would you really do? Would you
wouldn't go to work tomorrow?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, it really changes your perspective on things. Like how differently would you think if you knew you only had but a short time? Like I just feel like how the Bible says, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Like we need to get that time back, because once it's gone, it's gone.
That's a good jumping off point though. I was just thinking about 1948 Israel. So if this is part of the grand deception during this time, it had to be kind of a calculated time that they were trying to push this in order for it to be something else that was going to happen. Because it's very clear if you could imagine, well, I mean, obviously you can't really imagine before like the 1800s, but if Palestine, whatever you want to call it, was in the hands of people who were not claiming to be children of Abraham, the idea of a third temple coming would be like, well, I don't even know where you're getting that biblically. And also, what are you talking about? Like, why would they build a third temple? There's no relevance to modern times. but because of 1948, they can push this narrative like, yeah, the tail wagging the dog of prophecy. Oh, well, this stuff's all happening. Okay, so if they want us to believe that, why do they want us to believe that, and into what end? And it does seem like that with that timeline, yeah, there has to be some kind of an end date on that.
Yeah. 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 And honestly, think about it this way. Right now, I said this in my most recent video, I just posted it, but I've just come to the realization, I've come to this conclusion that the pastors in the little season have actually become propagandists. Like they're being Pied Pipers for Satan in this little season, because and it's not even necessarily their fault. Like I do believe that there are people who are genuine, like they actually want to do what's right in the sight of God. It's just they've been deceived so much that they're believing all these lies, and then they're regurgitating all of the lies, and they become propagandists for Satan, even not even realizing it, if that makes sense. And it's just crazy because Satan, it's like the same old trick. He's using God's word against us. The thing that we trust the most, he's using his word to deceive us, just like he tried to do with Jesus and stuff like that. So people can read this verse about Israel, and then they could see what the TV told them, and they're like, well, that obviously has to be it, So it's just like he's using God's word against us, and we have to realize that now, and we need to be really vigilant.
Well, I was explaining. I think you guys were talking about this before I came on, but I was with Eddie Bravo, and I did explain to him, because I used the flat Earth as an example, and I was like, "Look, you believe the flat Earth, and you understand that basically the education system is complete bunk. They've lied about a lot of things to cover up the truth about the nature of our reality in terms of cosmology, and you can see how grand the deception is." And how even those people working in the sciences don't know they've been lied to, and they think they're really smart and they know everything, and they know all the science and the math about the universe, and they've got it all figured out perfectly, about planets and stars and gaseous, whatever it is, and galaxies and the distances and the times and the scales, and how space works and how gravity works and the theory of relativity and the way planets meld onto sheets and quantum physics. And they're really smart people, right? I've gone through the educational systems, and they know everything, and they're the experts. But it's all bunk because we live in an enclosed system. It's all absolute nonsense, basically. But they don't know that. They sincerely do believe they have all the knowledge, and they're really intelligent and experts on the situation. Well, I said it's the exact same thing in the seminaries.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up.
They've done the same thing. They've gone through the whole system. They've gone through to Bible college, wherever it is, wherever they learn all the how to interpret scripture with the correct exegesis and blah 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 blah, all that type of stuff. And they learn all the big words. They learn the church fathers' histories and Nicene creeds and where it all comes from. And they're like masters of biblical theology and eschatology based on the futurist doctrine. But that's where the lie is. Like they may have mastered, the word of God, but they've also been injected with the propaganda and the lie of, and it's all yet to come in the future. So these scientists may understand science and math very well and the method, but they've also been indoctrinated with the lie of vast infinite space and the rest of it. There's a bit of everything in there. And you can see the same thing has happened. Exactly. Why wouldn't it have happened also in these schools that teach the official doctrine of Christianity, that then go out to be the pastors in churches which are established and then spread the same message? And they don't know they've been lied to. They think they're really intelligent and know everything because they studied this for years, and we know exactly. And you always get the same message. I got funny enough, I actually got a message. Someone left a comment not long ago, and they said, this is nonsense. Like, the timeline of biblical history is clearly mapped out in scripture. I'll come back and explain it.
It's in the back of the Bible where they show you like the time.
And they said there's a very clear message in the Bible. It very clearly states what comes after what and when, and I know all this stuff, and I'll come back and explain it to you later. They never came back. Okay, because I'm guessing they went to go and read it and went, "Oh, wait a minute," something like that.
I flipped the next page, and then there's a different eschatology view of it, and it's like, "Oh, the timeline's actually different in this one."
Well, they don't never get to Revelation 20 because it's not relevant to us. That's a far distant problem. That's nothing to do with us. And say it's a short season anyway. What's that, like a week or something like that? It's nothing. Like, and plus, besides, Christ will be there. Everyone will see him. So Satan won't have long to do it, and it'll be over and done with in no time. Quickly to new heaven and earth type of stuff. And how would Satan deceive all the nations if Christ is right there?
Yeah.
He wouldn't. It wouldn't happen.
No,
It's not possible. Like, so then we have to live during a time where Christ is just not visible anymore. It's not that he's not ruling eternally. It's not that his kingdom isn't eternal and it's not been established, but there's a period of time where God lets his dog off a lead, basically, which is Satan, and Satan's completely in God's control. And God has ordained that there needs to be a little season where Satan gets to do his thing for a short time. For our sakes, there's something going on here. It's a necessary thing. And again, I was trying to explain to Eddie, it seems like it's to give the freedom of choice back to us. Because it's easy to accept Christ when he's walking around and ruling with an iron rod. But is your heart really in it? When
there's no faith. There's no faith involved if it's
exactly
like that.
And faithfulness is not like believing because you can't just see. It's also having faith in something is sincerely being one with it, wanting to be with it, trusting is faith as well. It's marriage. It's faith. You're faithful in marriage. You know, it's that type of thing. God wants
faithful.
Yeah, exactly. Faithful keeps you doing right when they're not around and when they won't know.
Exactly. It's easy to be a Christian when you're living it up in the millennial kingdom.
Yeah.
What about those people who, like I said, what about the rest of the dead? I know that might not be the case. We don't know about that, you know, but we have to speculate here. Even if we're just the remnants of survivors of the millennial reign and so forth, we are the people who really get to make a choice. You know, we have free will again. So it seems like that seems to be what God's trying to do here in some way. Because again, Satan has no real control without God's permission. We know that. So we call it Satan's little season. There's always having this big hurrah as well. And it's kind of his moment in time to shine. He might feel that way, but he doesn't really have much to do.
No.
He has one job, really.
Drag people to hell.
Make an army. That's it, you know, and make people. And it seems like it's obvious to us what's going on, you know, and I guess he makes it obvious because it's kind of like, what are you going to do? You make a choice. You're clearly going to side with the devil or God here. It's a very clear choice when you really think about it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's meant to be clear. I think it's not a confusing decision to make, especially once this truth gets out, when you finally realize what's going on and where we are in the timeline. So it's I don't know. I'm rambling a bit here. I've said a lot there. I'll give it back to you guys. I'm trailing off.
Hey, I wanted to just say something real quick too, because you were talking about just all the experts. You know, which I would like to hear more about your conversation with Eddie, by the way, if you got time. But
that was really actually I listened to about half of it. Well done.
Yeah,
I'd like.
Yeah.
I don't think it was my best work. I'm not gonna lie.
I was listening to you and I was thinking like you were doing a way better job than I would have done. I'll just say that you did. You were like laying it out pretty perfectly. I thought.
Good. Because I don't know what it is, but when I'm like on doing podcasts, I know I've done better on other podcasts. I know I've done it better. I left that podcast thinking, I have done this better. Why did I not say this? Why did I say that? You know, there was no. Why did I go on about this?
Well, if you start going off the rails the second half, then I haven't heard that part.
I don't think I did.
I thought you did. I thought you were nailing it, and I thought he was really receptive because he let you just lay it all out there. Yeah,
he was. He was very open to it.
Yeah, I was really stoked about that because even I went on Sam Tripoli and I was trying to explain it to him, but he wanted to talk about comic books and he wanted to talk about, you know, so it was really hard to stay on
track.
Yeah, because he wanted to talk about other things. But Eddie seemed like he was letting you go from start to finish, and he was
he really opened up by saying he's listened to a couple of the videos and he heard
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool that he
and I think he's already been thinking. I think he's clearly already been thinking about it because I know he's talked to John Levi before. And so he knows about the Tartarian stuff, the buildings, all these type of things. He's heard that perspective probably ad nauseum and probably has been more in that perspective than anything else. And then he has his friend who I've sent you the messages, you know, the guy who got me in touch with him, like some British guy. And he's like, you've got to talk to Eddie. Like, I'm on board with this millennial reign thing. And I know Eddie will love it. Like, talk to him. You know what I mean? I know the guy. I can hook you up. I can make it happen. And he did make it happen. And Eddie was open to it. And I don't know what's going on with Eddie. I can't speak for the guy. I don't really know him. I don't watch his podcast, but I think he's going through something spiritually right now. I think he's dealing with something, whether it's his own demons or choices in life or whatever's going on. But he seemed very open to the gospel. He seemed to want to hear it. He wanted a Christian to tell him what Christians truly are all about. I feel I got the sense of that from him.
Yeah, I
Because
did too.
there was a moment about 20 minutes in where he ended up like practically crying, and I didn't
That's awesome.
I wasn't expecting that. And it was at the comment where I basically explained what I said to you, that, you know, the devil can't do anything without God's permission. And that got to him, apparently. Like, so something's going on internally where he needed to hear that. And it got to him. Like, he was literally like wiping his eyes clean, trying to get back on track and carry on with the show. You know what I mean? I was explaining to you, this is intense stuff. So I kept it on track and we carried on. But yeah, he was really receptive and wanted to know more. And he ended the conversation with saying, you know, this was great. He loved it. He loved every second of it. And so let's get back on to talk about the clowns in the future as well. So maybe I can do a round 2 with him. But he seemed like a nice, receptive guy. I know everyone out there has their own opinion on people when they get that big. But whatever they've done in the past is irrelevant to me. I had an opportunity there to share this theory with a wider audience, and I took it.
That's
at
awesome.
At the same time, I'm thinking somebody like Eddie may have, and even his listeners may have learned more about the gospel and what it really means to follow Christ than perhaps they've heard before from the corrupt churches and false doctrines that most Christians represent. You know, I think this was a fresh perspective, which works its magic when people hear it. Because like I said, we've got the messages, I'm sure. Atheists coming to God, hearing this stuff. Christians who have fallen away, coming back to God after hearing this perspective. Things finally making sense. Scripture that was confusing, and the trust me bro responses of pastors when facing hard questions are finally answered with this theory. You know, and it's kind of no longer twisting yourself into pretzels to try and explain why Christ didn't come back when he promised he would.
Yeah.
It's all kind of back in place. And yeah, Eddie was open to all of it, and we'll see. That's his journey. He's in God's hands. I just planted a few seeds, and I did my best I could as a nervous.
You planted a lot of seeds, because I said when that podcast comes out, a lot of people are going to hear that. I said I think you did awesome, bro. Like at least halfway through.
Yeah, let me know about the other half.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, I can't co-sign on the whole thing yet until I listen to it all. But no,
course,
I think you're doing a great job, and I think that a lot of people like conspiracies, but they hardly ever get answers for like the future ones and stuff like that. So I think that that's why, you know, certain podcasts talk about Bigfoot and stuff, and it's like a lot of them are just, there's a million just paranormal type channels that just tell spooky stories. Well, what was it? Well, we'll never really know. And of course, then you have a Christian worldview and say, oh, well, this is likely some kind of remnant of the Nephilim. It's probably could be some kind of demon. It could be, you know, they could kind of explain like, oh, here's how this whole process works. And then you're like, okay, like people really dig that. When you get to the Tatari stuff, people are just like, well, that's really weird. What was the mud flood? We don't know. You know, like when did this start? I don't know. Like, you know, so there's a lot of curiousness. I mean, it's an interesting topic because we don't know more. But yeah, when you have somebody like you who can lay it out and say, this is what I believe it means, and then you have a full context that goes all the way back to Jesus. And I think a lot of people would probably just instantly say, well, there's something about this Jesus guy. I mean, like whether I believe it or not, I mean, he's super significant. It is interesting if he said he was coming back then. So what would have happened between now and then?
Yeah.
All the stuff in the middle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it literally, all of this, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it has, but it's absolutely kind of changed my life. And I know that may sound like cliche or corny, but like just my thought process is in a different perspective now, because, you know, it does make so much sense. Like all of these prophets, and I was mentioning this in another video, all of these prophets, they were sent to give the people a warning of their impending doom if they didn't repent of their sin. And each time the people that the prophets got sent to were the same people that God unleashed his judgment on. And so just thinking about that, Jesus, like in Deuteronomy, it says that God was going to raise up a prophet like unto Moses. And so I believe that was talking about the Lord. And just so no one gets kind of confused with the whole like prophet, it's not like Jesus was just like another, like one of those guys, he's just some prophet. No, he was a son of God. But a prophet is literally just someone who tells the future of someone who doesn't know what's going to happen, in a sense, you know. So in a sense, Jesus was prophetic. And it's just, it makes so much more sense that the people he sent to give the warning to were the same people that ultimately got the judgment.
Oh yeah, that makes so much more sense. It's funny that I was trying to read the Bible again this year, and I had like the chronology correct as far as when all the prophets were, and it doesn't categorize them in minor and major prophets, and you just put them together, and it was one of these things I couldn't even believe that I didn't realize this when I
Mhm.
was like, wait a minute. So you get through all the the Jeremiahs and the Daniels, and then you get into like the minor prophets, and they're clearly prophesying to Israel, who later gets taken into captivity by Assyria. And some people will still quote those verses today, and it's like, you don't think that happened?
Yeah.
Like, gosh, it's like, without being a conspiracy theorist like we are, it's like almost like, why did they put those books in the order that they did? It almost seems to propagate this idea that like, oh, well, that's going to come when this happens. And you're like, no,
Mhm.
that already happened. I mean, it actually doesn't make a lot of sense after you read Daniel when it's saying, shut up the words of this prophecy until the times of the end. Why is Isaiah prophesying to people judgments that are not going to they're going to have no effect on them?
Exactly.
And if you think about like, and then you read through like the book of Kings and Chronicles, you know why the judgment didn't come sometimes, because they repented.
Yep.
But if they did not repent, then all the things that they said were going to happen. So like, it's without the specificity of like the audience, that like, why are you telling some people the judgment's coming if it has no effect on them? Doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's funny because, I was just thinking of this one verse in the Bible when you're talking about in Kings. It made me think about there was a prophet. His name was Micaiah, I think, the son of Imlah. And so it they were saying that they hated him because he would always prophesy evil unto them and he wouldn't prophesy
Oh,
good
was that
things.
Ahab? Was that Ahab?
Uh
Don't bring that guy. He only gives me bad news.
yeah, and
I love,
so
yeah, that's hilarious.
yeah, he's like, I don't like that prophet. He's always prophesying evil against us. And he's like, Send me some other prophet, tell me some good things." And they're like, "Go forth and ye shall conquer in battle." And you got this other guy saying, like, "No, you're gonna die in
No,
that
the
if you
funny
go out
part
there."
about that wasn't the funny part about that prophecy was that he first brings him over here, and then he tells him some good news, and then Ahab already knows that he's not telling the truth.
Yeah.
He's like, what's the real prophecy? And then he's like, yeah, you're gonna die, and everybody else is gonna die around you. It's like,
Yeah.
he's like, see, I told you this guy sucks.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Yeah, I was wanting to touch on one thing too, when you were bringing about the experts, Paul, like you got all these people like in the scientific fields and they're like really, really smart and you were talking about like even in the seminaries and stuff, like these people, like they've got a lot of head knowledge, but a lot of times, like when these people are talking, they're just speaking out of school. So, like, if you remember, even like with the Pharisees, when they were talking to Jesus and trying to trip him up in his words and stuff, and then after a while, it said, "Well, they're not asking him any more questions after that because he was just making them look stupid." They were just talking out of school, and I feel like that's how it is with a lot of these people, even in like the seminaries and stuff. And I was telling JT about this. I'm making this video about how I disagree with Wes Huff on some things because I had given you a brief history of some of the things that I knew about like the history of the Bible. And I noticed that he pushes, which like in Billy Carson, he pushes a lot of they call it the Sinai Bible, which is the Sinaiticus. It's Codex Sinaiticus,
Hmm.
and they say that this manuscript is like the oldest one, and it's like from the 4th century and stuff. But he doesn't even mention, and this is crazy, like just like with everything else, there's always two sides of the story, and he's only talking about like the mainstream narrative of what it is because what he's not mentioning is that in the 1800s, it was like 1840, there was a big scuffle about this Sinai manuscript. And so you got one guy who says that he found it in a trash can in a Catholic monastery. And he's the one that's saying, oh, this is this ancient manuscript. It goes back from way back when, and all that. And he said that he found it in a trash can, and they were burning the pages of it, and that he recovered them. But actually, it seems like from the story that he was actually like doing stuff to the manuscript to make it look more aged. And
Interesting.
yeah, and then there was another guy, his name was Constantine Simonides, and they were alive at the same time. And this guy, Simonides, he was debating, and he was like going public. It was like a big deal with this Konstantin von Tischendorf guy. And he's saying, no, that's actually my work. Like that was me. I wrote it. It's not ancient. I wrote that in 1840. And it was this big old huge thing. And then so the popes and all that, they were really praising this Tischendorf guy, because they like made him like this big old, like after he came out with the Sinaiticus stuff, like now he's this renowned scholar and stuff. But this guy that's challenging him, he's saying, no, this is actually my work. They were smearing him, and they're saying like everything this guy writes is a forgery, when in reality he was like a brilliant linguist, and he was just very, very smart. And he was even saying like a lot of these guys, they didn't even come close to his knowledge in manuscripts and all that. And so the point is that these experts, is we need to question the experts. That's my point, because they're feeding us this narrative, and they've been taught that. You know what I'm saying? So like it's not
Yeah.
even it's not even like you can get so much schooling in your head, but one thing is that they're teaching one way in those seminaries and everything, because they're not being told what I just said. They're not being told about, after this Sinai thing came out with Tischendorf, that now you got Westcott and Hort that are using that same text. And now from that text, you got all the newer versions of the Bible. And then you got, after that, you got Darby, you got all these other guys that are like reviving futurism and stuff like that. And so I think that like people who are downplaying all of this, and I think it's a bigger deal than what people are actually saying, because it's around the same time that all this funny business is happening. You know, we're talking about orphan trains, the insane asylums, 1800s. Well, at that same period around the 1800s, they're coming out with all these newer versions of the Bible, when in the past they always trusted the Textus Receptus, which is the opposite of what the Sinai is, which is the received text. And even the Sinai, it goes off of like way off of what the Textus Receptus is. And so I just think that, like I said, we need to question the experts.
No, I agree. I completely. We were just talking about this with Vitali, I think, me and JT just before the show earlier today. And funnily, speaking of West Huff, you know, Vitali was asking, what do you think West Huff would think about all this basically? And look, no offense to the guy West, I appreciate what he did with Billy Carlson. I really do. Because Billy Carlson is a charlatan.
Yeah, that was
he
great.
Needed to bring him down a peg, and Westhoff was the right guy at the right time and just managed to do it, you know, and that was wonderful to behold. But when it comes to this, I've said someone like Westhoff will not respect us. He's not going to appreciate anything we're doing whatsoever. I still think he's a brother in Christ. I don't doubt his sincerity for Christ or anything like that. You know, I'm sure he has his own outreach programs that he works with, where he tries to spread the gospel and all these other things. So I don't doubt that. But when it comes to he is an academic professional who's been trained in these things, like we were talking about now. And to consider this what we're talking about, his whole education is called into question, and therefore his credentials and his whole body of work.
Yep.
And he has personally invested in that so much. He's an authority. He prides himself on being an authority on these things.
Exactly.
He's not going to give that up. These are the people who are going to struggle the most to let go of what the world has given them for towing the line, you know. And when you give yourself to Christ wholly, you believe what he said, or you don't. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day, you know. Or you can keep all your stuff and keep saying something else instead and spreading a different gospel if you want to. But I believe Christ when he said he was coming back to those people right in front of him. And
you know, I've had in my experience with people who are like him, they are way more open to preterism. Like that's probably what he would view this as, and I don't think he'd probably be able to have a real good argument, because I don't think I've ever heard him talk about eschatology in that kind of way. So he's talking about like the text and what it says and where the dates that obviously he's been taught. And I think that's probably these people's real blind spot. And I think that as somebody, I mean, I'm college educated, and I don't say that to brag about it, but it's like what I never realized, and which most people don't realize, is that a lot of things you learn are based on very loose facts. And so that's what academia has done a good job about, is they really kind of obfuscate like where they're theorizing. And then all the stuff in the middle of it is what we believe. But you're like, it's all based on things that are not concrete. And I think that's what it's like when you find out science is like that and you find out history is like that. So when even Ricardo and I were just talking about 70 AD, and like, we don't know that it's 70 AD now. I mean, obviously it's like, that's based on a different chronology completely than they were using before. I mean, it's easiest for us because everyone knows 70 AD was the destruction of Jerusalem. So for lack of a better number, we'll just use that. But we already know like that the facts about those things, the story, like kind of what Gunnar Heinzen said, we believe kind of a lot of the historical stories. But outside of that, the chronology is like, I'm not sure about that at all. And that's where like people like Wes Huff and them will say, or even like a lot of people who would try to debate us will say, well, the early church fathers didn't believe in this. And so the church father so-and-so wrote this in 1350 AD, and this other guy wrote it in this time. It's like, we don't know when they wrote that. I mean, like, I do believe that those people likely wrote that, and I don't believe they're all forgeries. But it is funny when you actually look into like what academia says, like these manuscripts and these writings from these early church fathers were not found until like the 1800s. There's lots of stuff that was not found until like very, very recently. And are those legitimate? I'm not saying they're not. I think that maybe to me, it sounds like they could be, but of course in the Gunnar Heinzen basically theory is like that maybe these people were really close to the apostles, like in the points of like writing these things, like these could have been, I mean, because the Bible mentions certain people with different churches, but it's pretty vague on who the authorities were in these churches. It could have been them. So they could have been writing about things that had not happened yet. So obviously it's like they didn't believe in preterism because tribulation had not really fully come to them yet. And like guys like Wes Huff would believe the chronology because why wouldn't he believe it? Because that's what he was taught, and he would have no, you know what I mean? So like, yeah, you're right. It'd be very hard for him to all of a sudden say, well, the dates are wrong. So now what do you really know?
Well,
and the answer would have to be like not much, because a lot of it is based on the chronology.
Exactly. Well, exactly. But I mean, we're lunatics for considering that the chronology is wrong. Like,
but people, it's funny. Like I said, the whole thing about the cataclysms in the, so it's like it's not even debatable now,
right?
That there was a cataclysm in the first millennium. So to me, it's funny that I feel like I got a good comeback now when people say, well, they would have wrote about that. And I said, well, why don't you go dig up the recipe for Roman concrete? Oh, you don't know what it is? Do you think they didn't write it down? Okay, so things have been lost during that time. So if you can't bring me all the receipts of how the Romans did things, it's like, well, then don't you think their writings would have been kind of in that same kind of place, wherever that was? Because it makes no sense to me that they would lose the recipe for concrete, because that seems like a very practical thing that would have been would have been known all around the whole empire, but yet it does not exist anymore.
Well, you also tried writing stuff down when volcanoes are popping off all over the place and the sun's just gone dark and a mini ice age is taking over, everyone's dying around you with plagues, and you're trying to live day to day.
And the sediment is 45 feet high.
It's like, oh, wait a minute, let me get my quill.
I was burning those manuscripts to stay warm.
Exactly. There wouldn't be much documentation. You think there would be. I don't think people really.
They're never going to forget this. We don't need this anymore.
Exactly. Well, we hear it all the time, don't we? It's like, when has there ever been 1,000 years of peace in human history? It's like, there's your problem right there. You think human history is valid. You think what the world has written down is accurate. You think the timings
exactly.
are there. You think they wouldn't lie to you about history for some reason. Why do you believe they wouldn't lie to you? Who's
Yep.
history written by again?
The victors.
We've all heard that classic phrase. I'm
Yep.
sure they wouldn't deny that at any moment, but they
Yep.
trust the record regardless of that, And that's, we don't. We're conspiracy theorists. We don't trust them. We don't trust them.
Don't you think, but Paul, don't you think it's crazy though? Because I mean, I feel like that you and I have not been looking into this very long. We find somebody like Gunnar Heinsohn, and I know a lot of people would disagree with him. But again, there is no debate now about 536 because all the academics even talk like, because when we were doing those videos about it, everybody talked about that. And we know that there's this blank spot in history and they call it the Dark Ages. So you'd have to be able, like somebody like Wes Huff would obviously be schooled enough where he would know that, yeah, there's this dark spot. It's funny. I even had my, my buddy Matt from Postmodern Theology on. He said there's a 700-year gap in the manuscripts.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was funny because like he literally was just like a light bulb came on at the end of the podcast. And so he's more open to those kind of ideas. And he realizes like, so he, like somebody like Wes Huff would know that there is these giant gaps. So why are there gaps? You know, I mean, I feel like that at some point we're going to get in front of somebody like him. Maybe we shouldn't say he won't, like consider it, because maybe he would, because maybe like people like him would have to, if he is intellectually honest and he does want to know the truth, then that might resonate with somebody like him.
Yeah,
maybe. I mean, I don't know. I think I don't want to pick on Wes specifically because there are plenty of people like him out there who are in the academic world who think like him, and I can't speak for any of them because I don't know them individually. But I assume a lot of them want to fit in with the academia world as well, but also be a Christian at the same time. So they're trying to be of the world and not of the world at the same time, and then those two things just aren't sadly compatible. Because obviously you get a lot of these well-trained academic Christians who are trying to apologize for Jesus. They would call it apologetics, you know what I mean? And they're out there trying to seem really intelligent to impress the secular types and the people who aren't believers, and the atheistic types. Well, it's like not all Christians are stupid. That type of attitude, we don't all believe in crazy things, or we can be intelligent too. Look at me, and they have like puff out the chest. And I know all this stuff, and I can make these solid arguments based on reason and so forth. And I said it before, and I kind of say it again. They already don't respect you because you believe in God. You'll never gain their respect no matter how hard you try to play by their rules. You'll never, in their eyes, be seen as one of them. They think you're crazy. You believe in God. It's simple as that.
Right.
They do not respect you. Stop playing by the rules. Let it go. Let go of that image you're trying to create that you'll never obtain in the world. The world has rejected you because you followed Christ. It's as simple as that. So let's go off on our own and do it as we should. Let's trust the Bible, trust the text, trust his words, and work backwards from there instead. Let's not trust what the world has told us has happened in the past, because there's a lot of evil people in control of our historical records who do not have our best interests at heart. Like, call me a conspiracy theorist, but we know the Illuminati as a big umbrella term exists, and there's many factions underneath them, all working not towards the betterment of you or our knowledge or our ability to perceive the reality around us. So, throw it all out. Forget what the world says, and let's listen to what Jesus told us, and let's work backwards from there.
Well, isn't it interesting too that if you think about like the normie kind of conservative types, well, like you get like a Sean Hannity will talk about how they're teaching Marxism at colleges. Okay, so where does that end? You know what I'm saying? Like, so what kind of history are we really taught? So like, obviously, a guy like Wes Huff is young. Like, so his college didn't have Marxist professors. So like, the point is like that. Most conservative have a very rightfully
they may have had Jesuits though.
Well,
they're
I mean, it seems obvious to everybody who's awake that these universities are just hotbeds just to train Rush Limbaugh once said, skulls full of mush, and they're literally trying to mold people's worldviews in them. And so, how new is that, really? I mean, obviously, in the research we've done, it's not new. And maybe this is the way it's always been. Yeah. So it is funny, like how people's level of being awake, they would say, oh, you're listening to mainstream media, they're lying to you. But then they'll read all their history books about all the world wars and all the other wars that the good guys won every time. You know, that's a weird coincidence, right? That the good guys always won these battles
every time.
and it's regurgitated through the culture and the media and stuff like that. And they could never consider that could be a lie, or it could be lies by omission about the things you didn't learn about all those things. And it really is crazy. I mean, like I said, it's funny because like I just did a podcast on this over Rumble talking about World War II a little bit. And I was saying like some of this stuff is like, I was sick to my stomach. So I understand why people wouldn't want to believe some of these things. And yeah, I'm sure probably all of us have been in that point where it's like, there's certain conspiracies you're like, gosh, I really wish that one was debunkable.
I know.
Because I don't really want to believe that one. And you can imagine if you do have like the wind at your sails, like with the world is kind of pushing, you're actually getting speaking duties, you're getting all this kind of things. And then like, now you have to like accept that your classical training was based on a lot of lies. You're right. That's a difficult thing. It kind of reminds me of like the Pharisees. It's like they knew a lot, but they didn't understand a lot. You know, like they are trying to trip up Jesus because they do know what the text says, but they don't understand it. And obviously that's what they talk about. His understanding is greater than all of them. Like, so like you could not trip him up with the text because he knew it and he understood it. These people understood it, and they really only understood it in the way that they could use it as a club against other people.
Yeah, because he even said, if you remember, he said to them, search the scriptures, because in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. He's saying Moses wrote of me, and you don't believe him. You know, all that schooling, and they still missed it. And
well,
that's
they missed the important parts, is because the promise to Abraham was always this promise of Jesus. And it's like, so they can tell you all the text, they can tell you all the law, they can tell you all the things you have to do, but they don't believe in what is promised. So therefore they are not children of Abraham.
Well, I think again, props to Vitality from saying this in our chat earlier, but he's explaining how Christ made his apostles out of fishermen and, you know, people who weren't highly educated, people who were the common man, workers, working class, you know, and he made them great prophets spreading the truth, and they could see Christ when he was there, but like I said, the educated couldn't, and those who were prideful and a part
that's
of these,
such a good point.
And the Pharisees weren't so much so. And I feel like that has always been the case. The ones who bring the truth aren't the highly educated, propped up ones who are in these schools that teach the correct doctrine that you must follow or you're a heretic type of thing. They're not. That's not who God comes to preach his message. And maybe it's the same in our time as well.
Because all you got to do is believe.
Exactly.
You don't need an academic. All you got to do is believe. That's I mean, it is kind of crazy just to think, like, to boil it down to the simplest levels. And that's why Jesus says faith like a child. God's promised you this. Do you believe he's telling the truth? Well, then you're one of his. And then you have people who know all the text forwards and backwards, but they actually miss what's right there. And that's why you could tell a fisherman, it's like, do you want to leave this behind and have eternal life? Sure.
Yeah.
Do it.
And then they
let's
go.
Do it. Yeah, throw the net away. I'm yours.
And then the guys with the frilly garments and got the best seats in the banquet halls. No, they don't want to leave that behind to go follow some poor man.
No.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
It's the camel through the eye of the needle problem, isn't it? And you can be rich in many ways, not just money, you know. And there's another thing as well. It's not just the education and the indoctrination, shall I say, that they have to give up if they were to let go, and, you know, what the seminaries taught them. It's the life that's paid for as well. Because these preachers, these pastors who have gone through the schools and end up in these positions of leadership, they're paid to tell that specific type of doctrine. If they deviate from it, they have bosses above them who will correct them, make them anathema.
Yeah.
We say,
and
definitely. And strip them of their power and their positions.
That's why all the academics agree, right? They always say, like, the so-and-so percentage of experts all agree about the same thing. It's like, I wonder why. Because they're all getting paid by the exact same people.
Yeah, there's a thing too. It's called, have you guys ever heard the thing called the tyranny of the expert?
No, I mean, I've heard
Well, it's just
similar.
basically it's that same mentality. It's just like we're all experts. All my friends are experts. You're not an expert. We know, and you don't. So you got to listen to us.
That
That's
sounds like
basically
2020, 2021.
yeah. That's
Getting
basically it
getting
in a
Where have I
deja
heard
nutshell.
that?
vu.
Where have I heard that before?
Yep. Yep, that's what it is. Hey
Yeah.
man, but I appreciate you having me on. I'm gonna have to hop off and go catch some food with the fam.
Okay.
So
Well, appreciate you joining, brother. God
yeah,
bless.
God bless. And
you soon.
we'll talk to you later, Paul.
Yeah. Thanks, Ricardo. It's good seeing you.
All
again.
right. Have a good one. Bye everyone.
now.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up here in a second. But you know,
Sure.
it's interesting. I want to say one thing because it makes me think of that was, I think it might be John chapter 11, is that Caiaphas actually had a prophecy that Jesus was going to die for the nation. And and he also says that he was also going to gather back the lost sheep of Israel. And so, like, in his mind, it's better for one man to die than the whole nation to die. And it's like, so God is literally telling him what Jesus is there to do. But in his understanding was flawed. Like, he didn't really understand what that meant. You know what I'm saying? Like, so God literally did give him an accurate prophecy about what Jesus was there to do. But they're thinking like, well, it's better for him to die than for us to lose all our stuff.
Yeah.
Because if the Romans come after us for creating some kind of rebellion, well, then that would be bad. So I don't care if he's innocent.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to die. And it's like, isn't that wild? Because it's like literally like God speaking to people, and it's like they, through their wicked heart, they're still getting the wrong message.
That's where the prosperity gospel gets you, isn't it? That's where you end up. Like, if you're going to go down that kind of route, it's all about worldly gains. Like, following God gives you prosperity and all this good stuff. And if the Romans are going to take my stuff away, let's give them a sacrifice to take the eyes off of us. And it's kind of, thanks God for the sacrifice to take the eyes off of us for a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we're talking about the harlot that rides the beast. Well, the beast turned on the harlot in the end and destroyed everything. You know, they got what they deserved, I suppose. These reinterpretations have to come now, don't they? And I'm getting a lot of people asking me the same questions, and I actually had to bring up the harlot and the beast analogy.
I know, I liked it. That's what I said. I was listening. I was like, I was amening you in the truck. I was like, because most people don't get that understanding. It's like, I really do believe that is a new interpretation of things, is why people say, well, I think that the Vatican is the whore. I think that this is this and this is that. And you're like, it's really clear in the Bible that who the harlot is.
Yeah.
It says it in the Old Testament. It's like, it has not changed. And obviously when Jesus comes to Jerusalem, he says it like, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who stones and kills God's prophets. It's like he throws them in jail. It's like that had not changed in the times of Jesus. So obviously, who was supposed to be faithful to him?
Israel. She wasn't faithful. This is the point. She was the harlot by definition, you know. And this is, and was it
right? They would have needed to be faithful first.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe the Vatican you could maybe kind of make an argument, but obviously there was no Vatican.
Well, audience relevancy knocks that out.
When the text was written, there was no Vatican, so it would be kind of a weird.
Audience relevancy knocks it out immediately. Like we said, okay, so what was going on in the time? He had only been talking about Israel at the time, and obviously drunk with the blood of the martyrs. They literally teamed up with Rome to kill the first Christians. Like, that's like literally what they did. They used the full might of the beast empire, the weight of the law behind them, to murder Christians, and they were right there with them. You know, they weren't stopping the Christians being killed by Nero and the rest. You know what I mean?
No, they were provocateurs. I mean, actually,
exactly.
when you actually read in the text and you're like, you see like why Jesus is talking to certain people a certain way, because like it's so funny too. It's like obviously those words get thrown around about how we're insensitive or ists and phobes and things like that. But when you actually read the text, it's like, you know who's talking about them a lot is Jesus and people like Paul, who are stirring these people up against the early Christian church. And they're also trying to pollute the doctrines of the early church too by saying, oh, well, you need to do this too.
Mhm.
I've always bring that up, and I know obviously I get certain Torah keepers who unfollow when I bring this up, but I think like when you think about like the gospel message to these Gentile churches, it's not like they had to read the Old Testament to understand what God promised. Like I just said, when Jesus comes to fishermen and said, "Follow me," and they believe he's the Messiah, well, that's basically enough. And so,
Mhm.
like when the gospel is being reached to these Gentile churches, they really only know. Like you think about, Paul says, "I only preach Christ crucified. I knew nothing else besides that," and they believed that this man Jesus died for our sins and rose from the dead. And then, if you believe that, you can have the eternal promises. That made them a church. And
Mhm.
then later, you have people trying to say, "Oh, but you got to do this too."
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, you put that little bit of leaven in there, and it is amazing. You know who did that? The
The
same
Judah.
people. Like I said, it's
Yeah.
funny.
Well.
It's like I said, it's the same as it ever was. It's like it really is like that nothing new under the sun. You're like, who are the people trying to make this confusing now?
Mhm. Well, there's plenty of Judaizers and legalists in the truth movement that are always there to tell you salvation is complicated. It's not. It's very simple. Just believe, and you'll be saved. There's not really much else, and that's the good news. It wouldn't be very good news if it became with caveats and everything else on top of that. It wouldn't be. It'd be, believe and you'll be saved, as long as you also follow this very specific set of rules as well. It's kind of
Right.
it loses its edge when you say it's kind of yeah, it's not as powerful as it's not very good news when it's kind of you also have to follow the old law exactly to the T beforehand with Christ as well. Now it's kind
Even
of
though even though the patriarchs, most of them did not follow the old law very well.
not very well. No,
That's what I
exactly.
was saying. It's funny. I literally just brought this up about that. I just read, I read Genesis again this year, and I was thinking about like that always gets brought up. Well, how did Jacob get the blessing after being so like kind of shady the way he did it?
Mm,
Because he wasn't good. And I was like, well, God, God's good, and Jacob believed. So Jacob wanted what God was offering. So he obviously him and Rebecca believed in enough of what God was promising that they did whatever it took to get it. So it's
mhm.
the Bible never really says that they did good when they did those things, but it was the belief in what God had promised, and God's faithful to even when we're not faithful. Then obviously through Him that it could still all work. And I
Thank
really
God
thought
that he's
about
still
that.
faithful when we're not faithful, because we are bad at it. Our track record isn't very good. This is the other problem, isn't it? So that's where grace comes into all of this, and yeah, it's beautiful. It's
Yeah, I
good. It's
really just
good
thought
for
about
us.
that. It's like it really, I mean, could you think of a more clear example? It's like, well, he didn't do what was right, but he believed. And I think that's why people always point to David. It's like, it's almost like, what sins can you get away with and still be a Christian? It's like, that's not what the story of David's about. It's like the David, despite his missteps, I mean, there was no doubt. I mean, you read through all Samuel and the Psalms and all the things that David wrote, you're like, there was really no doubt that David was a believer the whole time. So that's
Mhm.
why David is one of the patriarchs of the faith.
Mhm.
Not because he was perfect. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean like it's an excuse to sin. It just means
Mhm.
like,
Well,
do you believe, are you pursuing what God has offered you with some kind of zealousness? And I think
mm,
that's the story of David.
I think what it means to be saved, I think, is again a little bit more clarified with this theory as well for a lot of people. I think a lot of Christians and a lot of people's perceptions of Christianity is this nebulous idea of what being saved means. It's like, well, if you believe in Jesus and you get to go to heaven when you die, and you don't go to hell and you spend eternity in heaven. And when you really read into the text, it's like, I don't know exactly where we're getting that from, because we're talking about new heavens and earth at the end of all of this, and you'll get to live for eternity on the new earth. So it's not exactly like going to heaven necessarily. If you do go to heaven in this period in between the new heaven and earth, then yeah, maybe you're like in a holding place for a while before we go down and you get to inhabit the new earth or something like that. And I think this little season is finally contextualizing what it means to be saved. It says at the end of the time, everyone's judged by their works. Everyone, all people. But if your name's written in the book of life, you'll be saved from that judgment. But you're still going to get judged on your works as well as also being covered by the blood of Christ. So what's the judgment then? I guess the judgment they're making is, well, where do you get to be in the new kingdom?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Where's your level? What's your reward? What for what
you're
did,
right about actually you're right
Yeah.
about that, because it was funny. I was just having a conversation with the guy who he just gosh, I wish I had his channel name right now, because I give him a shout out. But I became a friend with a guy on X, and he started a new YouTube channel. And we're just talking about like the Great White Throne. And so there's a lot of questions between Christians about, like, wait a minute, do we go before the Great White Throne, or is it only non-believers who go there? But you're right, though, that it does say like that I mentioned to him that there's obviously scriptures about how we're going to be judged based on every idle word we've said and all the things we've done. We're going to give an account for it. Now, obviously, Christ is our mediator, and he covers up some of the bad things we've done. And yeah, maybe that keeps your soul from the fire. But who's keeping track of how much treasure is being stored up in heaven for you?
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting. I mean, obviously, I do think that, like, despite what maybe people have a perception of heaven, it's not just all harps and singing. I think there's duties, and there's probably ranks, and obviously some people are given thrones and they're judging everybody. Not everyone could have a throne and judging everybody, if you know what I'm saying. Like, so there is got to be some kind of level to understanding. But yeah, I think that sometimes it is like, yeah, what are you pursuing? Like, and I always do believe it's like, it's really about your why more than your what. But yeah, your works are evidence of your belief in your faith.
Well, I think it's more. I think being saved is kind of like, because thanks to Christ's sacrifice, when God looks upon you, he sees his son blameless, covered by the blood of Christ and his sacrifice, and all he sees then are your good works. He's not interested in where you went wrong, just that you were faithful, and therefore you're covered in the blood of Christ, and he just focuses on what you did, and that's your treasures in heaven. Basically, it's like, to what level do you deserve a kingdom in my kingdom, in that type of thing. How righteous were you necessarily? What did you do with the time you had in the gift of life, and all these type of things? But if you're not covered with the blood of Christ, you may have done good works, but you also did a lot of bad things, and he can see them all. He sees
right. You will never overcome the bad things you did by the good things.
He judges them all by those things, and your good will never outweigh the bad. That's the problem.
Yeah, we don't believe in duality.
Yeah, that's why you need Christ, so God will not perceive the bad, but only see your good works. And Christ is the one basically interceding and showing the good works. He's the one keeping all the bad stuff back while he's saying, Dad, look at this instead. You can look at the good stuff he's done. That's basically what's going on our behalf, in an extremely psychedelic, unexplainable, not cheesy, wearing white robes type of way, but we're talking like in some nebulous dimensional way beyond our perceptions and understanding, which we'll only understand at the end when we're in front of that great white throne.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to getting through into the new heaven and earth and working in the McDonald's, hopefully sweeping the floors. I'd be happy.
Well, you know what I mean.
Anyway,
better be a servant. Like with the prodigal son, it would be better to be a servant in my father's house than outside of it.
Hey, I'll clean the toilets. I'll do whatever.
You know what? I think it's that kind of humility too. It's like that. I think that we're all trying to store our treasures up in heaven, but it is like, I just want to be there. I believe enough that I just want to be there. But I do think, and maybe we can close here, is that I was telling this same brother, I was like, when I was first waking up and I realized I had left a lot of things undone, and I had not done much with the belief that I did have. What really kind of brought me to tears was like the parable of the talents. And obviously in the other accounts, it's like the parable of the minas. And I think that's the perfect one, where it's like that. So the master had given everyone something. Each of us are given more or less, right? God only really knows what you've been given. Mm-hmm. And then when he comes back, or when you meet him, he's going to ask you, what have you done with what I've given you? Mm-hmm. And so, like, there's obviously the guy who was given 5. He made 5 more. Enter in the joy of your master. So obviously he gets to the kingdom. And then you have the one who's given 2. He made 2 more. They both go in, right? So like, obviously they both went in. And obviously the one guy who did not get in was the guy who had 1. And it's not because he only had 1. It's because he took the one and he buried it and he did nothing with it. And so that's like, seems like obviously he got cast out into outer darkness. So I think that it's like doing something. I mean, it's not like you're not saved by your works, but like there is something you're asked to do.
He'd rather you were hot or cold.
You're supposed to be doing something with what he's given you, and only God knows. So it's not like you got to look at some other guy and say, well, I've done more than him, or I've done less than this person. It's like, it's not about that. It's like only God knows. And obviously through your faith, you know, should you be doing more? And obviously to me, it's like, unless you're thinking you should be doing more, well, maybe you're not, you know, I gotta never think like I could do less. Cause I'm always like, oh, I want to do more.
Well, it's funny because before I was saved in March of 2014, you know, I was 20. I think I was 24 years old, 23 years old. I don't know. Time's getting away from me now. I'm actually losing my memory earlier than I would have liked, it seems. But
you're putting a lot in there. Some stuff's just got to go at some point.
Yeah. But I do remember having this feeling when lost in the world, searching for yourself and identity, chasing every avenue to fill that God-shaped hole in your spirit, in your very essence, you know, trying to find those answers. There was this feeling of I am wasting my potential. It was always looming over me, and the guilt of knowing I am not being what I'm supposed to be, and I'm wasting my talents, my skills, my abilities. I'm squandering them while also chasing after worldly pursuits and pleasures and distractions. I'm wasting my time here, whether it's through video games or addictions or whatever it is, you know. You know, because I'm blessed by God to be born with many natural talents. I can paint, I can draw, I can play music, and I'm a creative person. But there was this point in life where I'm not utilizing any of them, and I felt the guilt and shame of that. It's like a weight on you. It's kind of, I need to do something with this, you know. And you try and go down the worldly avenues, like going to art school, you know, and going to university. And I realized this is a corrupt cesspit full of self-masturbatory weirdos who are all patting each other on the back for taking plastic cast molds of their assholes and putting them on the wall. You know what I mean? It's like the modern art scene's trash, and the whole thing's trash, and the people in it are trash. There's no standards of beauty. There's no God here, you know. And it's kind of I was jaded with that, and obviously I came to Christ and everything. I realized, well, the only thing worth doing with any skill or talent I have is to forward his kingdom, to do what I can to spread his message and his gospel. And in doing so, life has exponentially gotten better, and that sense of purpose. I don't feel like I'm wasting my talents anymore, and it's kind of, I don't feel like I'm squandering what God gave me. I feel like I'm going to pay him back in dividends. You know, that's what I'm going for. And I think that is a natural feeling we have when we're lost and not saved, that we are not living up to our potential. And you only ever truly feel satisfied as though you are living up to your potential when you're utilizing your abilities towards his kingdom. And there's nothing more fulfilling than that.
Yeah.
I've learned.
No, that resonates with me so much, because I said, I know that was me. I remember, like I said, when I was going through like a really tough time, and I remember like I talked to my brother, and I literally like just broke down in tears, because I was like, and he didn't even bring up that scripture, because but I knew like that was me, like that I had done nothing with, you know, because like, yeah, I would have been really scared to meet God then. I mean, obviously you still have like a fear of the Lord now, but I mean, then it'd be like, what have you done? And I'd have been like, nothing, basically. I don't even know. Hopefully you would know better than me. Have I done anything? But I just knew that whatever God had given me, I had not used it for him. And I knew I was pursuing things that just did not matter. And I think that most people are probably like that. It's just like this Groundhog Day of like, boy, just get up and just wait for the weekend and just do it again next week. And yeah, and I mean, I do think that, I mean, based on only through God am I doing this and doing this other stuff on social media. It's like that I finally feel like that I am using some of my strengths to benefit the kingdom at all. And I was just like thinking, like, obviously before I did this, I didn't do anything. So I mean, I feel really blessed, because yeah, knowing that if I'm doing something now that's important, which I hope that I am, then looking back, it's like, well, God could have used me at any time to do this, but I was not willing. I was not ready for whatever reason. And you really think it. So it's like, if I could do this, why wasn't I doing it then? Anyway, so like obviously that conviction in your heart really is real. Like that, if you feel like you're not doing anything, it's because you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I
Well,
mean,
I remember when I even after I was saved, you know, I had a lot to learn. And there was a 5-year period where I was just working as a manager at a supermarket. I was a believer, but I wasn't doing anything. I was just living day to day, like you said. I wasn't addicted to things anymore. Sure, I've been doing a lot of personal work on myself. I was burning away the old self, becoming a new creation, you know, being born again in a true sense. But once that work was done, there came a point in my life where I was like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Like, I'm not a manager of a supermarket. I'm a conspiracy theorist. What am I doing here? You know what I mean? You have that moment. It's like, I'm almost 30. Why am I? I've been here for 8 years.
yeah.
You know, like, what am I doing? And you do have that moment. I call it a midlife crisis or a quarter life or something. I don't know. But I did have that moment where I was pushed out of that job from one terrible event after another until the light finally came on. And it's kind of like, get out. You're not supposed to be here. This is not what, you know, you're wasting your potential. It's that voice, that Holy Spirit voice, that niggling in the back of the mind, that pushing of the Holy Spirit. It's like, go out and do what you're supposed to be doing. And that's different for everybody. For me, it looks like this. But for anyone out there, it could be anything. It could be just be reaching those around you in your family. It could be using your gifts and your talents to get the message out any way you can, whatever that is. I don't know. But God made us all fearfully and unique in our own way, with our own style, and what works for some doesn't work for others. Go and find out what your style, who your style works for, and get it out there and reach those people. Because it takes all sorts, you know. We're not all the same.
That's a good thing to make sure that everyone realizes what we're saying. It's like, because me and Paul are doing similar things doesn't mean we're saying like, well, you should be doing this or you're not doing anything. It's like that that we're all parts of the same body, but we're different parts. A lot of us, and it's like that you don't tell the eyes to be like the hands or the feet. You know, you got to be something different. You know, like do whatever. Because there's times where like that. I'm sure like people like Paul and I thinking like, well, we could be at some soup kitchen right now. Would that be any less than this? No. Which is better? Well, I mean, God has called certain people to do certain things, and the most important thing is typically right in front of you. You know, because it's kind of like we could do this kind of stuff and we encourage each other, but then you treat people around you like crap. You know, like that. I'm sure that happens a lot in certain scenarios where like you get these guys get prideful and you're getting up there like, you know, like you imagine like some of these preachers, and then they're this is more important than you, right? But like God judges our hearts and like knows why we do the things we do. But yeah, I think that's why I think the parable of the talents, I love that one probably out of all of them, like the most, is that obviously people are given different things and different things are expected of them. And only God knows. Only you and God know together.
Well, think about this as well. This is kind of like war. It's a spiritual war. That's what we're in the midst of here, you know. And you look at the way an army is structured. It's like I said, you wouldn't expect a frontline gunner to be a messenger. You know what I mean? It's kind of, and I feel like our role, basically, we're like journalists trying to tell the people back at home what's going on and where the battle's leading us and what's coming ahead and all these type of things. We're just documentary. We're documenting the truth as best we can and trying to get it to the people who need to hear it. But then there's people on the front line in the comment sections of our videos who I would say are defending us and keeping us on track and making sure the enemy doesn't get to us, you know. And I'm thankful for those people, like my moderators and those in the community we have who are on the front lines arguing with people, showing them the facts in a true like fighting style way. And that has its place. Some people need it. That needs to be out there, and that's just not what I do. You know, that's just not that I don't have the abilities to do or act like that or be like that. But there is a time and place for that type of stuff. The righteous indignation, shall we say? So I'm thankful for everybody who's involved in this movement. And like I said, we're a body, all playing a different part.
Well, right, you know, and also like one thing that obviously I'm sure that you feel is just like I do is just the encouragement that people give us too, because like sometimes you do this stuff, and I was saying like the stuff as a content creator, sometimes you're just like, well, I made this video and it's doing good. Now what? Now I got to make another one. And like, sometimes it's just like, you know, and then, but then is it really matter that much? And then you get somebody who sends you a message and saying like, they're really encouraging you and like in your, you know, so we need that. But I do love the analogy of like soldiers in a war and stuff, because obviously the Bible used that example. It's like that, yeah, you wouldn't put somebody who's a sharpshooter on the front line. He's got a different role, right? It's not that he couldn't do that, but it's like we need him here. Or the guy who's the strategist. He's the guy who's like really planning the things out. We don't want him on the front line. But then they're the people that need to be on the front lines, and they've got different roles. You obviously want the medic being with them, or being like, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody's got a different role to play in the spiritual battle. And I saw Pearl was saying in the comments of like, I wish I knew what my role was. It's like that. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't even that long ago that I remember having a conversation with my wife, and I was just like, I don't know why I started making TikToks, and I don't know why I started doing certain things, and I don't really know where it's going. You know, like I just started doing that, and I thought, well, you know, it's kind of exciting that I know that God could do anything with this. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just waiting for him to kind of show me. And then shortly after that, it was like I kind of connected with Brian, and we started making a movie, and it was like, oh, maybe I'm making movies. Like, I guess the point is like that I didn't necessarily see myself here. I remember at one point I was saying like, I think that I could probably do podcasts, but that was before I had the podcast. And so before I even knew what I was. But I think that even today, and I'm sure you're probably similar to me, like that. I mean, I feel like I know what my role is right currently, but I don't know what it is in the future. You know, is God going to open some doors? Is God going to close the door? Like, where does it really go? I mean, you got to take it day by day, but I do think that if you ask God, just in the same way that the Bible clearly tells you that if you ask for wisdom, God will give it to you freely. If you ask, like, I think that's the ask and knock and you'll be answered. It's like that. If you ask with a sincere heart, God, tell me what you want me to do for you. I do truly believe that he will answer you. And I mean, it's not our timing, but it is like through certain opportunities. Before you know it, it's like that you might be doing something and you're like, dang, this was what he meant for me to do. And I didn't even know, like, I didn't hear anything articulated, but all of a sudden this opportunity presented itself, and now I'm here.
It does feel like I'm just being pulled around by God to go exactly where he needs me to go when I need to be there. And I don't feel like I've really done anything to end up where I am. It does feel like that sometimes. Like, how did I end up here? How did this happen? Where did like, and it does seem like you said, opportunities just turn up in some odd serendipitous way at the right time. And it's kind of, I'm now taking that mentality of like, okay, so this is what you want me to do next. That's every time it comes along, it's kind of, and then there's this, I've got, thank God for my wife, my discerning wife, who can smell sharks and piranhas and vipers in the water, you know, when they're circling around, the vultures when they're circling, because I'm a naive fool who trusts everybody, you know, but she's like, she tells me who not to trust quite well, and she's always right. It always turns out to be absolutely correct every time, you know. So I do feel like I've got a lot of help along the way. Again, and I've got people looking out for me who I probably don't even realize are looking out for me half the time behind the scenes as well in these chats as well. But it's a war zone out there. But I do feel like God's in control, and he's moving pieces on the chessboard today, and I'm a pawn. It seems so. Like, I'm just there being moved around at the right time to do the right thing.
You might be a bishop.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't like horses. Oh, the bishop's on. That's the knight, isn't it? You know, I'm definitely not a knight. Let's put it that way.
What is a rook? What is a rook? Is a rook? I mean, maybe I'm confusing the terms.
I have no idea. The bishop can go diagonal. I remember that. I remember that much. And is the rook the castle that can go back? Yeah, whatever. It's been a while since I played.
You're doing well, like I said. And why don't you tell people when they can? Well, maybe you don't know. Like, when is the Eddie Bravo podcast coming out? Because I think I know a lot of people probably here in my chat, and obviously a lot of the same people are in your chat. They're really going to be excited to hear this message being on a bigger stage.
Yeah, well, for those who aren't like decrying me as a shill because I managed to talk and network with Eddie Bravo, or calling Eddie Bravo a shill and saying what you're doing associating with such people, it just happened. You know, he had a friend who's from England who said, I know Daddy Bravo. I think you should talk to him. I believe the theory.
Bro,
I think,
I already
you
told
know,
people. It's funny.
yeah,
I can't remember who I had this conversation with, but I said, I'm telling you guys right now, you call me a shill, call me whatever you want. If Joe Rogan asked me to be on his podcast, I'm going to go on to the podcast, and I'm not going
exactly.
to apologize to you for that. So you don't have to apologize that. I mean, I think to me, it's like that. What I heard when you were on there, like if all of a sudden I heard a different Paul thinking like
Hmm.
giving partial truths and not saying certain things, that was not like that. You were saying all the things that like you shouldn't have to apologize for.
I'm not
But
apologizing. I'm just
no,
saying that is
no,
happening
I
already.
know,
You
but
know, and
I'm
it's
just
kind of
saying like that. I was
what
listening to it again. I've only listened to half, so maybe he said something wrong. Paul said something completely incorrect later that I'm gonna have to refute later. No, I'm just kidding. You were bringing the fire. I was really thinking that was awesome.
No, I'm pretty consistent. If anyone who's followed my track record, I'm pretty much the
Yeah.
same person with every single person I meet, and I don't really change. I used to be a social chameleon before I was saved,
Mm.
but now I am just not like that anymore. I can't be like that anymore because I'm not that deceptive. I just have to be me. You know, I'm bringing my authentic self every time, and I think that shows in this podcast. But I said the same thing to those people. It's like, look, so if a man invites me onto his podcast, and to share this truth, I'm just supposed to say no because you don't like them. Like,
Well, they're not a good Christian. It's like, yeah, but obviously the sick need a physician. Their audience, obviously, there's lots of. Can you imagine? Like I said, can you imagine all the seeds that get planted when you're talking about Jesus in a very real way on a podcast? Is that big? I mean, I think it's awesome.
I mean, he invited me on to talk about the little season. Okay, fine, I'll come on and talk about the little season as I always have done, and that's what I did. And he again, you watch it. If you're on Patreon, you can go and watch it now. So I recorded it and I put it on Patreon. I can't release it to the public until he does because it's not it's his show. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it on Patreon until it's publicly out in the open, and anyone can watch it. You know, then maybe once that's settled, I'll release it to the public on my YouTube eventually. But if you can't wait for Eddie to release it, I don't even know where he's going to put it. It might be behind a paywall for all I know, or it might just be on Spotify. I don't know. He didn't clarify to me. I don't have a date. I have nothing. I just went on there, did my thing, and left. But he let me record it, so it's on Patreon if you want to go and see it early. And just wait. Eventually, will come out to be public in no time. I'm not like withholding information from people, which I've been accused of again. You know, behind a paywall. It's like no, it's
no. I get it.
It's courtesy. You know, it's not my podcast. I can't just release some guy's podcast to the public on at large. Like I've kept it for a reserved few who have chosen to support me. Here you go. Here's something as a thank you. Here's the podcast. So if you can't wait, go and listen to it there. But usually these things come out within a week or two. So
Act just said, I love Paul's 30 minutes. I said, I remember me going on your podcast with 15 minutes, and it was like, it might have been 90 minutes before we were done.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh yeah, this was supposed to be half an hour, wasn't it? What am I on? Am I on an hour 15 or something?
Yeah, but no, I will say this again, not that we even have to say, but I was saying that I mentioned before to Ricardo, I was saying that Eddie Bravo, I always thought that when I heard him on Rogan, I didn't agree with him all the time, obviously, but I remember feeling like that he did listen to the same kind of things. He read the same kind of conspiracies, he watched the same kind of videos, because when he was telling them the conspiracies that he believed, they were always clowning on him. But I was like, no, he's pretty close. I think he's pretty close. And so knowing that and then listening to it, it was like, he seemed like he was really open to it. And again, you mentioned, and he mentioned that he had already listened to some of your stuff. So I think I really do. I'm encouraged. I thought it was a really great opportunity. I think, like I said, obviously, I think you made the most of it. So I was really like thinking, yeah, like, so not only for him having you on the show, but he was not trying to push back. He was really receptive. And I think that's why I said, I think that I think it could be really big, and I'm really excited for you.
Yeah, well, thanks.
I'm excited for us. I'm excited for us too. Again, at no point did he try to frame it in any way, or put a box on it, or lead it in any other way. He literally just let me go, and he was in agreement pretty much throughout the whole thing. And yeah, it seemed like you're right. I think he may the fact that he listened to your podcast before and had somebody reach out. I think that he must be really open to some certain things. Maybe he is going through some stuff, and And he needs the Jesus message more than anything, not the millennial reign stuff, not the little season stuff. He needs the real, the Jesus real, all this stuff's real. And I think that's what most people are going to get out of it. I know we like the conspiracy stuff, and obviously those who are in Christ, we want to know more. But I do think that there's going to be so many people who just say, like I said, that Jesus guy, I've heard a lot about him. Maybe I need to look, because like this actually explains everything.
Oh yeah, and I tried to make that clear to him as well, just as I've tried to do for the past year with everybody else as well on my channel. Like this is the best. This is the best frame for everything conspiracy. This puts it in a nice little package that makes sense. And I'm excited to be here with you guys. I am. And who knows what the future holds? Maybe Joe Rogan's next day. Probably not, though, because I'd have to travel to America to get that done and go to Austin. But I can't afford that. But who knows? Let's see what happens.
I'm sure we'll work it out. If you get invited on, you're going.
If I end up getting invited to Joe Rogan's podcast,
you can stay with Vitaly. He's in Texas.
Is he in Texas? Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to be constantly checking in with Telegram to make sure everyone knows I'm still alive and everything. I've not been taken over or hidden or compromised, or I don't. Like, I'm going to constantly be in touch with everybody, and I'll film it and document it with regular clips from my phone of where I am. I mean, I'm in the studio, guys. There's the chair, you know. But I don't imagine that happening. I don't imagine it going that far. I don't know if Joe Rogan's really interested in this type of thing. But who knows?
Well, you know what? I mean, I think that if you really think about it, so it's really only been probably about a year that we've been talking about this stuff, a little over a year. It is pretty cool that, like, I mean, some of the bigger podcasts are like either having to address this matter or inviting you on. You know, now obviously not a lot of the big Christian podcasts are inviting us on, but those are they're having to talk about it. And I do think that, yeah, with movies, even like I guess Hitler's thing about old world order and stuff like that, more people are learning about this, and they want to understand it. And it's obviously anybody who has got a church background, they want to know. So I don't put it past them that like a Tucker Carlson or somebody like that would talk about this, because they've hinted enough about little parts of hey, I think some of these things there's some anomalies in history. I do wonder. I mean, I really don't put it past it. It's like that. How long could that take? Could it happen? I do believe it could happen. I don't know when it could happen, but I don't doubt it.
Well, I don't care how far gone we think some of these people are, these big figures in the truth movement or the controlled opposition, we'd call them, or the shills. Anybody can repent and come to Christ. Yeah. So I don't.
Yeah, it's not like the gospel was like, beware of shills.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Like, look, if they want to know the truth, then I'll tell them the truth. If they want to accept it, they can leave it. You know, and the truth is Christ at the end of the day, and that's all we can do. That's all we can do. And you know, if they're going to let me on their platform to tell that truth, I'm going to take the opportunity. I'm going to do it. I'm going to proclaim it. I'm not going to be shameful. I'm going to be proud about the truth. You know, and I'm just going to say what it is, and leave it at that, and move on to the next thing. Yeah, and you know, I'm not one to look back. And I think a lot of people have a lot of high expectations for the Eddie Bravo thing. I think some people are more nervous than I am. I had a laugh with some of the guy who was like, "Are you ready for the podcast? What are you going to say? What's going to, you know, and what are you going to take it?" And I'm like, "I'm just going to do what I've always done. Relax. Like, this is not going to change the world."
It is funny. I've gone on a few where I was a little more nervous, but then it is funny. Like when you actually start doing it, it's like, it's just like all the other ones.
Yeah.
They have the same kind of technology we have. They might even have the same microphone. They have the same studios. It's literally just a podcast. And I do think that, yeah, I get it. I mean, I get both sides of it, where you would be a little bit nervous, but I thought, like I said, I thought you were killing it, bro. So
yeah. Well,
so anyways, obviously,
let's get ready for the backlash. Let's get ready for the responses. Let's get ready for the new wave of people who are discovering this who otherwise wouldn't have discovered it. I think we've got a good body of content out there ready for them to sink their teeth into now. I think we've got a good foundation, and let's just keep doing what we're doing.
Well, like I said, I got the shirts, and of course I need to make some more so I can send them out to people. But I had the shirt that Jesus said there would be haters. So Jesus said, "If all men speak well of you, woe to you," because he said, because so their fathers and their ancestors spoke well of the false prophets. So if there's not some haters, Paul, you ain't doing it right.
That's right. That's right.
So anyways, I appreciate you coming on, brother. I appreciate all you guys in the chat, especially if you guys gave a super chat or you guys send memberships. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you guys more than you guys know. I will see you guys soon. God bless.
God bless.
All right, that was good, man. I appreciate you hopping on. That was fun.